The vast land is shrouded in dense fog. A few quiet, cold peaks emerge from the mist. Brilliant evening glow spreads across the horizon. A small carries a young maiden and a little girl soaring in the sky. Before long, they arrive at the mountain gate's heavenly ladder. This is the foot of Danking Peak where the insignificant Mohis school resides. The girl is Lu Dongli, the sole elder of the Mohis school. She looks 16 or 17 years old, tall and slender. Xiaoqiu, a little chick's disciple, went up the mountain. Little chick was wondering why her master didn't fly. Lu Dongli smiled faintly and said, Xiaoqiu, this is your first time up the mountain. I want you to get familiar with the environment of Danking Mountain, and I'll also briefly explain the sect rules to you. After finishing the introduction of the sect rules, Lu Dongli then began to introduce Xiaoqiu to the situation of the Mo sect. The Mo sect has a total of 10 members. 6 of them are disciples of Lu Dongli. The last one is the sect leader's disciple. The sect leader is Lu Dongli's older brother. Lu Jilir introduced them as they walked. Finally, she turned and seriously warned Xiaoqiu, never be alone with the sect leader, and never imitate him. Xiaoqiu was so scared that his body trembled. He said tremblingly, Master Uncle, does he eat children? Lu Dongli recalled the past, sighed helplessly and complained, he doesn't eat them, but he's far more terrifying. He's sick. In Lu Dongli's, my older brother since childhood, always boasted about seeing through the essence of the world, possessing the protagonist template, simply playing around in the world. Lu Dongli carried Xiaoqiu, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at the mountaintop. Xiaoqiu opened her big round eyes, like a curious baby, looking around everywhere. Suddenly, I discovered a man in a long black robe under the moonlight, standing with his hands behind his back on the peak, facing the biting cold wind and gazing up at the sky. Then the man swept his hand, with boundless magnanimity. A sentence drifted from his mouth. Heaven did not give birth to me, Lu Choj. The vast heavens in ancient times are like a long night. Lu Dongli became very anxious upon hearing this. She hurriedly put Xiaoqiu down. She covered Xiaoqiu's ears with both hands and helplessly said, Don't listen. Unbeknownst to her, at that moment the majestic figure had already appeared in Xiaoqiu's eyes, which were filled with stars. Saw such a handsome man. She quickly asked, Is this the sect leader's senior? Lu Chaojin noticed someone approaching from behind. He turned and glanced warningly, saying, Child, you're very lucky to join my Mo sect. This will be your life's destiny. Lu Dongli trembled upon hearing this. Afraid Xiaoqiu would be infected by the pretentious man's nervousness, he held Xiaoqiu and wanted to leave. He turned Xiaoqiu's reluctant little head and said expressionlessly, Don't look back. Lu Zioj watched the two people run away, checking Xiaoqiu's attributes. Jiyu and Ju other attributes are also good. This is a treasure find. Lu Zioj turned to face the bright moon. Hands behind his back, he bathed in the moonlight. He let the mountain wind wash over him, watching the clouds gather, disperse, roll, and unfurl. He was deeply lost in his memories. Lu Zioj had been in the Chan Xuanji game world for 21 years. With his knowledge of the plot from his past life, the game was about to enter its internal testing phase. The game Xiangxuan World is a large-scale virtual world game of the 22nd century. Some say it is the creation of gods. Some say it is another world. Others say it is a parallel world. Players in the game are merely projections that have descended into this world. Suddenly, a notification sound appeared in Lu Chage's ear. The game's closed beta is about to begin, and some features have been unlocked. Upon hearing this, Lu Chage lowered his head and gave a wicked smile. Just as I expected. Lu Chage had finally waited for the system to activate. After a moment of joy, he opened the attribute panel. Current attributes: Root Bone 1, Swordsmanship Aptitude 1, Chance Encounters 3.14, Charm Max. Initial stage: Great Perfection. System evaluation: Useless Trash. A breathtakingly handsome piece of trash. Seeing this, he rolled his eyes, speechless. 3.14, a serendipitous attribute. Isn't this freaking PF? This is actually a circle. Wonderful and inexplicable. Lu Ziege self-admiringly stroked his chin. The comforting thing is that his charm value has reached its upper limit. After all, weakness is temporary, but handsomeness is a lifelong affair. Being handsome is enough. Then I checked the countdown for the game's internal test. The system showed that there were 30 Earth days remaining before the internal test began. The time flow rate in the game world and on Earth is different. 30 Earth days is equivalent to 300 days in the game world. Thinking about the soon-to-arrive sand sculpture players, Lu Chage is filled with anticipation for the future. Lu Chage was once a part of the Earth world. In that world with no sentimental attachments, Lu Chage was definitely a super-rich second generation. His parents were so rich they were completely absent from home. Aside from bank transfers and phone calls, Lu Chage had no idea where his parents were, only living alone in this huge house, living a life like an orphan. In my past life, Lu Ziege lived a life of luxury and pleasure, indulging in games incredibly wealthy and extravagant, Louis said. Don't challenge my allowance with your family fortune. Now he leads a boring and flamboyant life. Lu Ziege feels that life has become tasteless. Lu Zong was playing a game the next day. Suddenly the screen emitted a dazzling light. Streams of light overflowed, enveloping Lu Ziege. Then the space around him began to shatter. After the void settled, Lu Ziege opened his eyes. What he saw was a loving couple. The man's face was full of surprise. The beautiful woman beside me seems very exhausted. We suddenly made a terrifying discovery. We've transmigrated and been reborn again. In this life, Lu Chage gained the family affection he had longed for in his previous life. When he was 19, a demon cultivator passed through. Lu's father, as the head of the Mo sect, and his wife stood up to fight. Both were severely injured and the demon cultivator died. Lu Ziege, having lost his parents, knelt before the memorial tablet and wept loudly. He cried, saying he'd lived for over 40 years, only to experience parental warmth in this life, with these parents. This inexplicable state made Lu Dongli heartbroken and beside herself with grief. Tearfully retort, "Brother, you're only 19. My thoughts raced. A prompt suddenly appeared in front of Lu Ziege. Quest function unlocked. Do you wish to accept your sex quest? Lu Ziege, who had hoarded experience points for over 20 years, couldn't level up and couldn't accept quests. Finally a quest appeared. This won't be missed until death. Only a fool wouldn't accept it. Lu Chage's face was full of anticipation. The corners of his mouth curled up. He eagerly accepted the mission without hesitation. Notification sound came. Sect identity scan in progress. Identity confirmed. Your identity is the leader of the Mo sect. You have successfully accepted the sect's main quest. Strengthen the Mohist school. This is the dying wish of Lu Zige's father. Open quest detail. Light scattered, the Mohist school's rating begins. Looking at this gorgeous visual effect, Lu Ziege couldn't help but comment. System, your special effects are pretty good. System rating complete. The Mo sect is not even worth mentioning. What the hell, look at this damn system rating. Lu Chaoju was stunned. How is this even supposed to work? Is it a system bug? Or is it just a useless system? Lu Chaoju began to question his life. Based on past experience, the lowest rating for sects in the Tiangxuan realm should be 9th grade. A top-tier sect like the Sword Sect, one of the 4 great sects, is considered a so-called second-rate sect. This is the first time Lu Chage has seen it, and he deeply suspects the system has a bug. After a careful review, Lu Ziege was shocked to discover the problem stemmed from himself. As the sect leader and its representative, he needs to meet certain cultivation requirements. The unaware individual even thought the system had a bug. The Mo sect is insignificant. It should have been expelled from the Jianzhong subordinate sects long ago. But Lu Zong wasn't the least bit worried. He only knows that I have connection. It feels so good. Feels really good. After a moment's thought, Lu Ziege decided to solve the problem at its root. Tomorrow, I'll go down the mountain for a breakthrough. Under the moonlight, Lu Ziege arrived at a tomb mound in the forbidden area of the back mountain. He raised his right hand. He gently tapped the tombstone and asked, "Is the offering still here?" A wisp of purple smoke slowly drifted out. This was the offering in the Mo sect's hanging offerings. It is said that it acted some hundreds of years ago. Its strength was extraordinary. He is now secluded in the grave. Lu Ziege always wants to confirm if he is really dead or not, thinking that if the offering is dead, there's no need to dig a grave. He can just be buried on the spot. The next day, Lu Zong and Lu Dong. The highest level meeting of the Mo sect's central authority was held in the Mo sect's main hall. The two exchanged their opinions on descending the mountain in a friendly manner. Lu Dongli, a representative of the conservative faction, had a stern expression. He stated that this proposal was highly inappropriate. Isn't it better to stay on the mountain and cultivate? Why go down the mountain so publicly? Lu Chage certainly disagreed. 21 years of silence. Finally, the day has come to see the light. He slammed the table in rebuttal. I need to go down the mountain to harvest soul-cleansing grass and make a breakthrough. Upon hearing this, Lu Chage was heading down the mountain for a breakthrough. Lu Dongli instantly couldn't sit still. Her eyes sparkled. With a surprised expression, he spread his arms and shouted, "I thought you were completely useless. Heaven has a—" I only saw the president lowering his gaze. His gaze was sharp as a torch, and he spoke calmly. I told you, don't look down on the young and poor. Looking at the grand and heroic sky, he was as arrogant as could be, swearing to make the Mo sect famous in the Tiangxuan realm. The elder brother who will bring glory to the family. Lu Dongli wore a helpless expression. After a brief tidying up, everyone gathered outside the hall, ready to depart. There were 4 people traveling together. The sect leader Lu Chage with his senior disciple Hai Ting, elder Lu Dongli with the adorable little chick Xiao Hu. Looking at his plain attire, Lu Zong frowned in disdain. He was very dissatisfied with Lu Dongli's arrangement. So low-key. How could this reflect his handsome and elegant appearance, the aura of a Taoist immortal? The two kept bickering, unaware of the large tree beside them. 2 mysterious men coldly watched everything. The 4 unaware rode a small into the flame forest filled with crimson trees. searching for the marrow washing herb. Looking at Lu Zhij, who remained motionless in front of them, Xiao turned and curiously asked, Secmaster Senior Uncle, why have you been staring blankly since just now? Lu Dongli patiently explained to Xiaoqiu, the Secmaster is in meditation. Achieving a state of stillness is a necessary skill for cultivators. Xiaoqiu, you need to study more in the future. Upon hearing this, Xiaoqiu's eyes lit up. She didn't hide her admiration for the Secmaster at all, so the Secmaster is that amazing. But at this moment Lu Zhij was simply choosing among the system's general level missions. He stared at the yellow, blue, purple, and orange missions, lost in thought. There are 4 levels of advancement missions. In order they are yellow, blue, purple, and orange level. On a small boat, Lu Zhij stared intently at the mission interface. He was pondering which advancement mission to accept. Yellow and blue level quests are relatively easy. Most players can complete them easily. Purple level quests are a challenge for most professional players. The hardest are orange level quests. Based on my knowledge of the previous life, those who accept this level of quest are extremely rare. Only someone like Lu Zong, a big spender, has the strength to take them. As a chosen one who transmigrated, Lu Zong, backed by the system, fears nothing. What are you thinking? If you're going to do it, just do it. Directly accept the orange level quest, and check the quest details. After understanding the quest details, a smile appeared on Lu Chage's face. It was a slightly wicked and confident smile. An orange level quest is nothing special. At this moment, not far behind the group, 2 people are stealthily following them. On the invisible light boat behind them, there is a man and a woman. The man is a handsome young man, and the woman has a voluptuous figure. The young man clasped his hands together, placing them in front of his chest, and cautiously asked, Senior Sister Ning, aren't we following too closely? Won't we be discovered? The woman with the attractive figure, lazily leaning against the small boat, looked charming, and with a careless wave of her hand, reassured the young man not to worry. That woman is Ning Ying, one of the 9 current elders of the Sword Sect, possessing profound and unfathomable cultivation. She is Lu Zij's mother's former close friend. Lord Lu keeps shouting every day that he has someone above him. It is Ning Ying, the elder of the Sword Sect, who is backing him up. Ning Ying looked meaningfully at the young man beside her, curious to know the reason the young man had followed. The handsome young man felt a mix of emotions. His gaze was firmly locked on Lu Chage ahead. He slowly, it must be hatred. Hatred? Right? A guy he can even hate. He's quite something, isn't he? Ning Ying teased relentlessly. That handsome young man is Yu Yu, the strongest rising star of the Sword Sect, the #1 young man in Qingzhou. He was born with extraordinary talent and was taken in as a sword attendant by the Sword Venerable. Possessing a flawless sword body, he is a truly righteous man. In the distance, Lu Dongli controlled a small, light boat. It landed steadily on a clearing. Lu Dong meticulously observed. His sister seemed to have secretly hidden her cultivation. Startled, Lu Dong trembled slightly and quickly denied it. Lu Zij's lips curved into a slight smile. He thought to himself, men can only rely on themselves. He can't rely on his sister. He ignored her. Lu Zij leads everyone along the outer edge of the dense forest, planning to find the marrow washing herb first. Although the advancement task seems simple, it requires a one-on-one fight with a level 10 quasi-boss level wild monster. Lu Zij harbors deep doubts. Does such a thing really exist? Lu Dongli suddenly stopped. With a look of surprise, Jin felt lucky today. He actually discovered 3 washi herbs in one go. The faint fragrance of the washi herb filled the air. Sakyu couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She anxiously shouted that she wanted to eat it. She was about to step forward to pick it. With his sharp spiritual sense, Lu Chaojin noticed something deeper in the forest. A gaze tinged with a faint crimson blood-red hue shone through. There is a beast. Xiaoqiu and the senior martial brother turned pale with fear upon hearing this. They trembled uncontrollably. Lu Dongli quickly stepped forward. With a sword in hand, she took a combat stance. Her face was grave as she looked ahead. At this moment, Lu Chaoji stepped forward and stood in front of everyone. He arrogantly said, full of swagger, "Don't move, this grass is mine today, I've got it. Not even Jesus can take it from me," he added. Lu Donglai couldn't help but twitch her mouth. Her heart was filled with endless sighs. Her brother's arrogance was about to act up again. Nothing could stop Lu Chong from being like this. Chunfeng Day walked towards the 3 cleansing marrow herbs. He secretly sighed, marveling at his incredibly fortunate chance encounter. It truly was only a superficial appearance. Watching his elder brother striding towards the cleansing marrow herbs, Lu Dongli was dumbfounded, a wave of helplessness washing over him. How dare he just go up like that? But in Xiaoqiu's eyes, at that moment the sect leader and elders seemed to shine with brilliance. He was so handsome it was earth-shattering. Stars seemed to be appearing in her eyes. She was in total awe. Yu Ning and Ying were watching from the shadows, not understanding what was going on, quietly watching Lu Choji's performance. Lu Choji approached the body cleansing herb. She happily shouted towards the hidden beast's location. "Oh no, I've left an opening." The beast, moving in sync, could no longer hold back. It suddenly lunged with its blood-red, gaping mouth. A notification sound rang out. Black Striped Snake level 10 pre-boss level. At this moment, Liu Chage remained completely calm. He coldly laughed, looking at the storage ring in his hand. He thought of high-end hunters. They often appear as prey. Streams of dark energy flowed. Liu Xioj took out a weapon from the storage ring. Just as the black-striped snake's fangs were about to bite him, Liu Xioj snatched up his long sword and struck with a sudden blow. He yelled, "I'll knock your head crooked." In an instant, the black-striped snake's head tilted and it flew backwards. Yu Yu, who was hiding nearby, tilted her neck at the sight. Her body instinctively reacted. To cover up the awkwardness, Yu Yu rubbed her neck. Childhood trauma. It was terrifying. So it turns out, young Yu relied on being the #1 swordsman of King Zhou's sword venerable to lord it over her fellow disciples, acting arrogantly and domineeringly, bullying her fellow brothers and sisters until they couldn't bear it anymore. Liu Xioj, her senior brother, naturally I'm not as arrogant as he is. He grabbed Yu Yu's collar and slapped her hard across the face. That slap was like a nightmare, deeply imprinted in Yu Yu's heart. That arrogant boy disappeared. Liu Xioj struck the black-striped snake's weak point with his sword, already severely injured, lying on the ground writhing and convulsing, appearing to be on the brink of death. In the next moment, the black-patterned snake suddenly lunges, spitting out a deadly toxic mist toward Liu Chage, only to see Lu Zong's sword point press and pinch. A sharp sword energy shoots out from his fingertip. In an instant, it pierced through the black-striped snake, taken away completely. The whole process was seamless, elegant and extraordinary. Axio cheered excitedly, continuously applauding and congratulating Liu Chaoji. She looked like a total fangirl. Liu Zhilai stood silently beside them. I'm quite puzzled by my elder brother's extravagant use of spiritual energy. It's not at all prudent. Ding. Prompt appears. You have slain the beast. You have gained 10,000 experience points. The advancement task is complete. Do you wish to claim your reward? Liu Zhi nodded slightly. He very satisfied. He directly opened the mission reward. You have obtained an orange level awakening voucher. Looking at the mission reward, even our well-traveled director Liu, for a moment, was a little unsettled. Upon breaking through the initial stage in the Tiangshuan realm, a practitioner with extraordinary talent will be favored by certain forces of heaven and earth. This grants him an innate divine power. The awakening of the spirit means receiving the blessings of these forces. Being chosen by the gale means wind awakening. This is exactly what happened to Lu Dongli. Yu Yu, on the other hand, successfully received the blessing of blazing flames. She gained fire awakening. Liu Xioj stared at the enlightenment scroll in his hand. His smile was radiant. It was as if a bright future had already arrived. Wu taking off. No more obstacles. Liu Xioj was overjoyed. He picked a marrow washing herb. He prepared to find a safe place to perform the enlightenment ritual. Strange beasts roamed the flame forest. This place is too dangerous. Lu Dongli thought of this. She quickly took out the light boat and led everyone to evacuate. The chubby little Q looked at her master, his face serious. He silently thought to himself, truly sensitive when it comes to safety. Master really is particularly sensitive. After confirming that the four had left, Ningying appeared with Yu Yu. She carefully took out the jade box. She placed the remaining 2 spirit cleansing herbs carefully. She prepared to send them to Liu Chage as well. As expected, as the saying goes, having connections on top makes everything smoother. It really is smooth. Soon after, Lu Dongli, along with everyone else, found a hidden waterfall. A rope ladder descended from the sky. It soared over the guard tower and past the treetops. It fell straight down. After some investigation, Lu Dongli finally confirmed that the area was safe. She let out a sigh of relief. There are countless roads, but safety is the most important. Liu Chage had nothing to say. I think my younger sister is overreacting. It's just a small breakthrough. It's not like she's going through a heavenly tribulation. Why go this? Master Lu bends down preparing to sit. The eldest disciple, Hating, is very observant. He skillfully takes out the meditation cushion and places it on the ground. Master Lu's years of training finally paid off. Liu Chaoji was confident of victory. He took out the cleansing herb and said slowly, I feel something. I feel like something is about to burst out. Lu Dongli's beautiful eyes lit up upon hearing this. A smile appeared on her face. Brother, after all these years, you're finally going to break through? Only Xiaoqi remained still, her pink round face expressionless. She stared intently at the fragrant cleansing herb, drooling with anticipation, wondering if the sect leader might spare her a little. She saw sect leader Lu grab a handful of cleansing herb and toss it into his mouth. In an instant, excruciating pain spread throughout his body, veins bulging. His contorted face was drenched in sweat as his nerves were set on fire. Startled little chicken Xiaoqiu stood there, dumbfounded, sobbing and shouting incoherently. The master helped the sect leader. Not far from the dense forest, Yu stared intently at Liu Chage's figure. You're finally going to break. She sighed inwardly. After all these years, are you finally going to mend the rift? The rift? Ningying watched all this calmly. Zioiti. Do you think Zoji still has a chance to awaken his spiritual powers? Impossible. Yui turned around and said firmly. From ancient times to the present, there has never been a case of someone over 16 successfully awakening their spiritual powers. Ning sighed slightly. She secretly thought it was a pity. Lu Xiaoji's missed the best time for his spiritual awakening. But soon, mysterious auras emanated from Lu Xiaoji's body, like ripples on water spreading outwards. Seeing Lu Xiaoji's transformation, I was shocked. He's about to awaken his spirit. Suddenly a golden pillar of light shot up into the sky, piercing the clouds, breaking through layers of bird clouds, stirring the heavens and earth. The sudden celestial phenomenon attracted many idol cultivators from the Tiangxuan realm to join them. Ning Yang naturally wouldn't allow this group of insignificant little characters to disturb and watch Lu J. A surge of energy enveloped his body, emanating an overwhelming pressure, a warning to the meddlesome onlookers. The curious bystanders hesitated and quickly retreated. As for the person involved, Lu Zhang, he was completely unaware of his surroundings. His entire mind had already entered a mystical state. It felt as though his soul had entered the universe, floating between heaven and earth. His body felt as warm as an infant in its mother's womb. He feels an unusual sense of peace. At this moment, the power of heaven and earth surrounds Lu Qiuj. Our President Lu, what kind of favor from heaven and earth will he receive? When Lu Qiuj broke through to the peak of the initial stage, he used the Spirit Awakening token. It was like his soul entered the universe. In the vast and boundless heaven and earth, searching for his awakening spirit, the chaotic and varied forces of heaven and earth surrounding Lu Qiuj. At this moment, Mr. Lu reaches out his right hand, intending to grasp the force of heaven and earth closest to him. But to his surprise, these forces all swiftly flee, keeping their distance. However, one day the power of the earth quietly appeared behind Lu Zhang. It slowly gathered and formed a dazzling light. Lu Qiuj sensed the unusual presence behind him and turned around to look at the strange light. It turned out this was the power of heaven and earth that belonged uniquely to him. Just as President Lu was about to awaken spiritually, under the cute and clumsy offensive of Cao Jizhe and Xiao Qiu, Lu Donglei could only spare a small petal of the marrow-washing grass to this adorable creature. However, unexpectedly, after eating the petal of the marrow-washing grass, the adorable creature fell into a deep sleep. After a long while, Xiao Qiu opened her hazy eyes, the stupefied master in front of her anxious and uneasy. Following along with Donglei's gaze, Xiao turned her head in surprise and discovered that the once rushing waterfall had unexpectedly frozen. It was suspended in mid-air, like a miracle. At this moment, the sky was filled with dense clouds and birds blocking out the sun. A golden beam of light broke through layers of obstacles. It pierced toward the earth. Lu Qiuj exuded a powerful aura from head to toe, spread outward, radiating light so intense it was blinding. It was like a deity. Above the 9 heavens, golden light filled the sky with rolling red clouds. A magnificent palace faintly emerges from the radiant light. Waves of solemn and majestic. Deafening sounds of the Tao arrive. You have awakened your spirit. A sudden celestial phenomenon appears. This is actually a heavenly mandate of salvation. Although Yu and Lu Donglei have both successfully awakened their spirits, neither of them triggered the heavenly mandate of salvation. Within the Tiangxuan realm, only the first to awaken to different elemental powers of heaven and earth can receive the heavenly mandate's descent. Shocked, Yu was even more curious about her senior brother, Lu Xiuj, and what kind of power of heaven and earth he had obtained to trigger this heavenly mandate. It seemed Ning Ying saw what he was thinking. The answer: water. Ru Kailing, the heavenly decree of salvation descended from the heavens once more, spreading throughout the 4 seas and 8 wastes. Those who were about to leave, all eager for a good show, stopped in their tracks, wanting to see this favored child of heaven. It can trigger several heavenly Tao decrees. According to the records, anyone who can trigger a heavenly Tao decree will hear at least 6 sounds. Anything beyond 6 sounds depends on one's individual destiny. Lu Zhang, surrounded by the power of heaven and earth, at this moment feels like he's soaking in a hot spring. Waves of warm energy flow through his body. Although unable to open his eyes, he hears the grand sound of the Tao. This sparks his curiosity. Who's making such noise? You cling. A series of heavenly Tao salvation orders arrive. There are already 6. Lu Donglei and Yu are tense. I wonder how far he can go. Hearing this, Ning Ying teased from the side. Guess how many heavenly Tao salvation orders Zoji can trigger? Yu closed his eyes and said helplessly. The more, the better, of course. One after another, heavenly Tao salvation orders kept coming. With his eyes tightly shut, Lu Zhaoji suddenly had an epiphany. So this is what the heavenly Tao is. He's a broken record. Lu Xiaoji appeared in the void at some point. The brilliance blooming around him was like a lotus flower, hanging in the sky. making our director Lu look incredibly extraordinary. Lu Dongli looked at her elder brother. In her heart, she finally received the 8th heavenly Tao's saving grace. You are enlightened. Everyone waits with mixed emotion. The celestial phenomenon reappears. A giant golden lotus shoots out a massive light beam, shining towards Lu Chage in the void. In the distance, the 9th celestial salvation decree rings out. You awakenling. The one chosen by the 9 celestial salvation decrees. The beloved child of heaven and earth has manifested. Lu Chage suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was intense and his heart was unwilling. My fate is mine to control, not heaven's. There is no need for the will of heaven to recognize me. I summon the spirit. Golden light spread throughout the void. A figure appeared within it. The power of water element surrounded the figure. The person was Lu Chage, standing with one hand behind his back. He looked like a deity. System notification. Congratulations, player. You have successfully activated the spirit awakening. You have gained the power of heaven and earth, water. Lu Chage slowly opened his eyes and gently waved his sleeve. He sensed the heavenly and earthly power he had just acquired, and it felt quite marvelous. He couldn't help but channel his spiritual energy to savor its unique charm. In an instant, water droplets shot out from a large waterfall nearby, gathering in his palm. Then he closed his 5 fingers together, clenching his fist, and the ball of water immediately dispersed, turning into scattered droplets. The water droplets were formed into a ball of water. Lu Zong looked at the ball of water in his palm and smiled wickedly. This water control skill has many wonderful uses. Those who understand, understand. Lu Dongli and the others had already been marveling nearby. At this time they all congratulated Lu Zioj on obtaining the water power's awakening. However, Sakshu, the little chick standing aside, lifted her chubby little hand and vigorously wiped her round face. I'm still savoring the taste of that cleansing marrow flower petal, but inexplicably I'm drooling. Manager Lu stands behind little chick, looking smug. Indeed, not bad, not bad. The water in the human body can also be controlled. One can choose where the water flows from. It seems the power of water is stronger than I imagined. Everything is finished now. That's it. You can go home now. Make sure nothing's been overlooked. Lu Dongli then took out a small boat and led everyone away. Yu, who had been hiding in the shadows, watched them leave. At this moment, she seemed somewhat distracted. It was as if she could see the man, who once controlled her, returning. Beside her, Ningying watched Lu and the others depart. They also couldn't help but marvel at how much Lu Chage has grown. He's really made something of himself. Suddenly, Yu realized something. Despite successfully awakening his spirit, Lu Chage hadn't broken through. After a brief pause, Ningying calmly spoke. I hope nothing happens to Cheoj. She then set off, continuing to follow Lu Chage and the others from the shadows. The scene shifts back to Lu Cheoj and the others on the light boat ahead. Lu Zong at this moment is like an old monk in meditation, his eyes tightly closed. The problem that weighs heavily on Lu Zong's mind at this moment is quite the opposite of what Ning Ying and the others are worried about. 21 years of accumulated experience can finally be leveled up. Just how many levels will it be? Accumulated experience not only allows for leveling up and mana restoration during crucial moments, but also allows for skill upgrades. When Lu became entangled in the confusion of fate, on the small boat, Lu Dongli took out some spiritual spring water from the spirit gourd. She asked who wants to drink this spiritual spring water. Raise your hand. Upon hearing this, little Q, the greedy one, immediately nodded eagerly, raising her small hand high. Hiding also raised his hand in response. The younger sister saw that Lu Chage was still in deep meditation, and at this moment, holding the water cup, she gently asked, Brother, would you like some water? Lu Chage also woke up at this moment and took the water cup. He gave a crooked smile, making up his mind. He began upgrading the system in his mind. In an instant, Lu's body emitted a radiant spiritual aura. Lu Dongli noticed that the spiritual energy around them became unusually active. A moment later, it surged wildly into Lu Chage's body. The aura around Lu increased rapidly layer by layer. It even broke through 5 levels of cultivation. Lu Dongli, who had sensed everything, suddenly turned around. Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at Lu Zong. Her brother had actually broken through to the 5th realm with just a cup of water. Lu Chage, who was being stared at by his sister with a strange expression, remained unfazed. His expression was as usual. He spoke casually. Is there something strange about it? Not far behind a faint voice from the concealed boat in the distance could be heard. Holy crap. Breaking through 5 realms with a cup of water. Breaking through 5 realms with a cup of water. Yu kept repeating this phrase, almost like a spell. This is insane, no need for meditation or concentration. It's quite a display. Lu Chaoji drinks a cup of water and breaks through 5 realms. This left everyone in awe, their minds shaken. This move is absolutely stunning. Above the flying boat behind him, even the well-traveled Ning Ying couldn't help but feel confused. No matter how much of a genius he was, breaking 5 realms in a row, how exactly did Zhaoji manage to do it? And Yu Yu, who was standing beside him, became even more convinced of his earlier guess. Senior brother Zhaoji must have deliberately stalled at the peak of the first realm before. It was a misunderstanding. He did not give up on himself. Instead, he had his own plans. At this moment, Yu had already come up with a backstory for Lu Chage, a story of a useless young man enduring humiliation and hardship to grow. Yu began to try to understand Lu Chage, and asked herself, if it were me, could I endure it? Have you not broken through after all these years? The answers found through contemplation naturally can't be achieved. You're not like senior brother. Ning Yang looked at her with the comforting expression of seeing a child grow up. Watching Lu Chage grow up in front of her, in her memory, Lu Chage was always different from other children. She stayed at Chujing for so many years. Every time I visit him at the Mo Gate, he always appears calm and peaceful. This child has an unwavering path of cultivation. Ning Ying has also already imagined the scenario for Lu Chage. Ahead on the light boat, the little chick patted its round belly. Master, why do you always startle so easily? The not yet cultivated Xia? I can't feel the slightest bit of shock from my master. Throat. The little chick, having eaten and drunk to its fill, comfortably stretched and let out a soft yawn. The surrounding spiritual energy began to stir again. In no time, light started to radiate from around the body. It shocked Xia Q so much that she didn't know what to do. Throat. At this moment, Lu Chaoji's gaze is also turned toward them. Mr. Lu looked pleased, while Lu Dongli appeared somewhat startled. Sakyu seemed a little suspicious and somewhat tense. Master, uncle, what's going on? Lu Dongli excitedly picked up the little chick and happily said, congratulations, little guy. He became a young monk with a round face. Xiaoqiu, who was still doubtful, muttered, really? Hee. Suddenly, Lu Zij received a system prompt. After detection, your sect has met the standards of a 9th rank sect. To advance or not, what's there to hesitate about? Charge. Lu Zij decisively chose to advance. The Moist school, no longer insignificant, successfully advanced to a 9th rank sect. Mission accomplished, upgraded the Moist school to a 9th rank sect. Lu Zij directly received 50,000 experience points. Swordsmanship aptitude attribute point 1. The smile on Lu Zhage's face gradually solidified. The swordsmanship talent finally isn't just a 1 anymore. In the past, I had plenty of experience points, but couldn't unlock any skills. Now that I've unlocked the sword intent, this is when things will really take off. Lu Chaoji thought to himself, if he remembered correctly, Yu Yu, as one of the main characters of the world, was said to have the so-called flawless sword body. That Lu Zong's charm is off the charts. Should we call it the flawless enchanting body? So incredibly charming. Just as I was fantasizing, the system suddenly went haywire. Sect mission second stage initiated. Mission description, raise the most sect from a 9th rank sect to an 8th rank sect. Mission reward 200,000 experience points, and 1 point of swordsmanship aptitude. The basic requirements for an 8th rank sect are clearly much higher than those of a 9th rank sect. Lu Chage was slightly confused. Why did my reputation increase so much? Little did he know that the earlier spirit awakening process had brought him a significant amount of reputation, but completing the requirements for this 8th rank sect is still a bit troublesome. A system prompt sounded again. The player reached level 15. New feature unlock Master-Disciple system. When a disciple's level increases, the master will receive a certain amount of experience points as a reward. Lu Chaoji opened his Master-Disciple interface. In the Master's section it said Lu Qingfeng. The 3 characters were in gray, indicating that this person had passed away. Mr. Lu and Lu Dongli's father Fang looked at this name and fell into a brief silence. Lu Chage is indeed a traveler, but he did not possess another's body and reincarnate. He was truly born by his parents and given life, and they gave him many warm feelings he never experienced in his past life. He adjusted his emotion. Don't worry, everyone. The Mo sect will thrive in my hands. Besides seeing that the teacher's column is for my late father, my attention was once again focused on my disciple's column. Only hiding is listed, and it shows a level 10 ranking. At that moment he remembered. He had broken through. His disciple must have reached level 10 and is ready to break through as well. Hiding's presence is so minimal on a daily basis. It's so low that Lu Chage occasionally forgets about him. Looks like the kid still hasn't let go of that thing in his heart. Sigh, Lu Chage suddenly said. Hiding, who was sitting to the side, immediately straightened his back. Then he bowed his head towards his master. To show acknowledgement, Lu Chage said impatiently, what is it with you? Why are you still stuck in the first realm? Looking at Hiding's face full of sorrow, he asked again, irritated. Aren't you still unable to let go of that matter? Hiding shook his head, but under Lu Chage's piercing gaze, he slowly lowered his head. That year, that day, that sudden old directly changed his life. Even now, recalling it feels like a haunting obsession. Originally, Hiding was an orphan from a village near the Mohist school. One day, a half-blind old man came to the village. His cloudy eyes swept over Hiding once. Then he spoke to the villagers, saying, "This boy has deep-rooted demonic nature. He will bring disaster to all four corners of the world one day. It will cause untold suffering to all living beings." But the half-blind old man did nothing. He simply left behind a warning, "You should be careful." Then he vanished without a trace, leaving the villagers around unsure of what to do. After the old man disappeared, the villagers began discussing that this child must not be kept. What a coincidence! He happened to run into Lu Ziyage passing through the village. Lu Ziyage revealed his identity as the son of the Mohist school's leader. He was revered as a celestial being by the villagers. The villagers, one after another, told Lu Ziyage what had happened. Upon learning the truth, Lu Ziyage said disdainfully, "Ridiculous. Looking down at this dirty boy." I said impatiently, "My sex still lacks a sword attendant boy. Are you willing?" The boy, Haiting, received care from a stranger for the first time, and couldn't help but feel tears welling up in his eyes. The villagers continued to persuade, but Lu Ziyage was also hot-tempered. "From now on, he will be my disciple, Lu Ziyage's disciple. From now on, no matter what happens, I'll take responsibility." Haiting felt like mud on the ground. The handsome young man before him was like a pure cloud in the sky. In a blink of an eye, he led the young Haiting to the foot of Danking Peak. Before ascending the mountain, Lu Ziyage stopped. He turned to look at Haiting. "He's a cultivator. Stamina far surpasses ordinary people. We've come this far without a single gasp, but young Haiting is different. He's already panting, but he stubbornly doesn't make a sound." As the young man stumbled, Lu Ziyage grabbed him. With a wry smile, he said, "Little brat, the road ahead is rough. Grab my hand." Time flew. Haiting has grown up and become the current senior brother of the Mohist school. Lu Zong turned to Haiting and said, "This matter is like a fog shrouding one's heart." Haiting stood there dumbfounded. Lu Chaoji raised his left hand, activating the power of heaven and earth, and coldly laughed, "But in this world there is no fog that cannot be dispersed." In an instant, the fog ahead was dispersed by the power of heaven and earth. The next moment, the fog was dispersed. Beams of sunlight pierced through the mist. The wine settled in the mountains. At this moment, Haiting saw the scene before him and was momentarily stunned. Then spiritual energy surged around him. Hiding, the eldest disciple of the Mo sect, watching the sky from a small boat. One glance shattered the initial mirror. That glance banished the inner demon. The initial mirror was broken. System message: your disciple's advancement was successful. Gained 5,000 experience points. At this moment, Master Lu's face was filled with a broad smile. He was enjoying the joy of a win-win situation. The little chick was gaping beside him, exclaiming in amazement, "Sect Master, so amazing." Watching the clouds and mist dissipate around them, everyone was deeply shaken. In the little chick's heart, the respect for the sect leader grew even more. On the other side, Yu wore the same expression as the little chick. "Wow, amazing. The power of heaven and earth can actually be used in this way." With just the first glance, the spirit was awakened. It was even able to use the power of awakening to remove the disciple's inner demons. That line, "There is no fog that cannot be cleared in this world," was truly magnificent. A light boat gently passed through the air, this time descending the mountain. The Mo clan could be said to have returned fully loaded. Lu Chage felt the joyful atmosphere of the group. With a crooked smile, he said, "Today I am in a good mood. Elder Dongli, find a place to land. I'll personally cook and make some fish soup for everyone." Upon hearing this, the hungry little chick suddenly realized, whether it was their master or senior brother, their eyes were filled with intense desire. In the next moment, the boat suddenly sped up. Startled, the little chick quickly hugged its master. Soon, Yikingjo landed in a small grove. "I'll go fishing," Lu Dongli volunteered, and immediately ran off. Hating beside him cleverly produced a table, chairs and cooking utensils, causing a small flock of chickens to scatter in fright. In the blink of an eye, Lu Zong watched Lu Dongli go. He waved at the chicken and said, "Xiaoqiu, come here. Master, please teach her what it means to be a cultivator." Although Xiaoqiu was confused, she obediently shifted her little bottom and moved closer. The basic education of the Mo sect officially began. After a long while, Lu Dong was holding two plump bass. Returning in high spirits, before she could speak, she sensed something was wrong. Lu Chage was, in what he considered a patient and instructive manner, teaching the little chick the essential principles of life. At this point, the basic instruction had reached the question and answer stage. When you defeat your opponent, and they still argue and are defiant, how should you answer? Saki opened her mouth. She felt she had grasped the essence, but didn't know how to express it. Lu Ziaja spoke, prompting her, for example, "It's not that the road is uneven." Saki's eyes lit up. She blurted out, "But that you're not capable." Lu Zioj clapped in delight. One big and one small both crooked their mouths and smiled. The smile on their faces was wicked and full of swagger, and all of this reached Lu Dongli's ears, like a thunderclap on a clear day. Immediately she shouted angrily, "Brother, stay away from my disciple." After this little interruption, after a while of fragrant work, the fish soup was about to be ready. Elder Dongli was still lecturing the little chick, saying, "You must never act like Master Zhangman. Anyone who isn't steady will definitely be beaten to death." As soon as the words were out, the little chick patted her chest proudly. She lowered her still childish voice and said, "Don't worry, with me here, the Mo sect is safe." She then exchanged a glance with Lu Choj. In front of the Danking Peak Gate, after everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, they boarded a small boat to return to the sect. Finally home. Before Lu Dongli could finish speaking, she let out a loud burp, immediately covering her mouth in embarrassment. This made the little chick beside her, holding its round little belly, look at her in confusion. This is really because Lu's skills are just that good. In my past, I specially learned this skill to raise someone's affection in the game world. I even took the time to master it. At the entrance of Momen Mountain, Yu and Ningyi had already been waiting here for a long time, but they pretended to have just arrived. Yu was helpless. Senior Ningying wants to perform. She could only follow along and perform. After all, she's just a junior. After the light boat landed, Lu Chage led everyone to bow to Ningying. Ningying looked at Lu Chage, gently patted her shoulder. Her face showed satisfaction and surprise. "You've broken through, not bad, not bad." Lu Zong looked at Ningying with a motherly kindness. Without any shame, he spoke directly. "Aunt Ning, you're just in time. I was still hoping to ask you for a one-masted boat. Because, eating soft food but acting tough, that's how bold it is." At this moment, Lu Chage finally noticed Yu, who was standing behind Ningying. Upon a closer look, he realized the person was his childhood playmate Yu. He raised his hand and gave a head pat. Yu instinctively tilted his head. It was like an instinctive reaction. At this moment, Yu touched her own neck and awkwardly chuckled, responding with a he. Lu Chage saw this and was also quite surprised. "Little one, Yu's gaze towards me today is a bit strange. Normally when I do this head-tilting move, she would definitely argue and fight back." Coco. How did he notice that Yu seemed to be enjoying it a little? Could it be? At this moment, President Lu imagined some indescribable scenes. He realized it. He quickly took 2 steps back, then he cleared his throat twice. He then assumed the role of the sect leader. I led the 2 distinguished guests from afar into the main hall. Moments later, after everyone had taken their seats in the main hall, Ningying said to Jidong and Li, "Have either of you encountered any difficulties in your recent cultivation? Aunt Ning can offer you some guidance." To the brother and sister Ningying, not only is she my mother's good close friend, but she's also somewhat of a mentor. She often visits the Mo clan to check on and guide us. Lu Chage seemed to have thought of something and spoke up. "A sword cultivator whose cultivation is not very high. Is it better to focus on breaking through first, or should I focus on studying sword intent instead?" Upon hearing this, Ningying and Yu were both startled. Sword intent. The reason Lu Zige asked this question was because he was a little conflicted. Should he level up his characters first, or unlock sword intent first? Just unlocking the sword intent function alone would require 100,000 experience points. Ningying did not expect Luja to ask such an illogical question at this time, but she still answered patiently. "Kaoji, logically speaking, as a sword cultivator, the earlier you comprehend the sword intent, the better. Since ancient times, any sword cultivator who reached the pinnacle of the sword path always comprehended the sword intent earlier than others. With the sword intent, every breakthrough of a sword cultivator will be enhanced by an increase in strength." But what Ningying didn't say out loud was the sword intent. For Lu Chaoji with his current realm, it was still too far away. Yet who would have thought? Lu Chaoji stood up and smiled confidently. "Aunt Ning, I understand now. I will comprehend the sword intent as soon as possible. I won't let you down and will live up to your expectations." Upon hearing this, Ningying was a little stunned. Before she could speak, Yu immediately stood up and said seriously, "This is impossible." Lu Chaoji, upon hearing this, slightly pursed his lips and said, "Why is it impossible?" Yu, who had already 1 foot in the sword intent realm, understands better than anyone the effort required to comprehend sword intent. She knows just how much effort it takes. She sealed her cultivation and practiced swordsmanship under the Great Waterfall, ventured into many dangerous places to battle with demons and monsters. At such a young age, she is about to comprehend sword intent. This is the thing Yu is most proud of in her cultivation so far. At this moment, Yu said sharply, "Ting Shisong. The sword intent is not as shallow as you think. In any case, it's impossible." After hearing the news, Lu Zong's thought was actually, "This kid, he actually dared to hum at me. He actually dared to hum at me. He's finished." But beside Lu Zong, Lu Dongli, who has always been steady and practical, heard it and thought, her brother seemed to be a bit too ambitious. For a moment, the atmosphere in the Mo sect's main hall was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Ningying saw that the two had considerable differences. At this moment, the atmosphere had been built up to this point, and she spoke. I heard that Yu has already stepped into the threshold of half-step sword intent. In that case, why don't the two of you have a sparring match? What do you think? Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, Lu Qiuji and Yu said in unison, Good. Under the glow of the evening sunset, everyone arrived at the training ground within the Mo clan. Yu already has the strength of the third realm. In order not to take advantage of Lu Qiuji, she suppressed her cultivation to the first realm, 5th level, to match Lu's strength. The two stood facing each other in the training arena. One exuded the elegance of a gentleman, the other a wild, cool, and awesome aura. Yu bowed to Lu Qiuji and said, Please give me guidance. Draw your sword. The next moment, Yu's long sword suddenly flew from its sheath. The sword light spun, radiating brilliance. Standing nearby, widened her eyes. She gently tugged at her master's sleeve. Looking up, she said, Master, is senior sister Yu very powerful? This powerful senior brother Yu? He is one of the most outstanding young talents in Qingzhou today. One might even say he's the strongest among the younger generation. Xiao Jihuan received this information about the younger generation, immediately tilting his head and laughing. It seems the sect master's senior brother is certain to win. In Xiaoji's heart, his senior brother is a senior expert. How can the younger generation compare? Lu Dongli was left speechless upon hearing what the junior disciple said. She couldn't help but feel speechless. On the field, Yu was holding the Shichi Qingfeng sword. He raised his voice and questioned Lu Qiuji. Senior brother Qiuji, why aren't you drawing your sword? At that moment, Lu Qiuji had his left hand behind his back, while his right hand grasped the sword hilt. He gently shook his head. It's rare for him to speak so seriously. A sword strike could kill. These words sounded so harsh in Yu Yu's ears, filling her with extreme anger. She immediately performed a sword flourish. Leaping high, her sword aimed at Lu Qiuji, preparing to launch an attack. She was trying to force Lu Qiuji to strike first. Lu Qiuji saw that Yu Yu was now filled with uncontrollable rage. He explained, opening his mouth. No, you misunderstood. He has sealed his sword for 9 years. Even if unsheathed, it's just not for sparing with Yu Yu. In Lu Qiuji's view, if Yu Yu didn't suppress his cultivation, he could resist. If his own life sword were to unsheathe now, Yu would definitely die. Yu Yu, feeling furious, silently thought to herself, if Lu Qiuji is unwilling to draw his sword, then I'll force him to draw it. As a result, the three of them engaged in a fierce battle in the training grounds. The sound of clashing weapons echoed continuously. Ningyi and Lu Dongla. Couldn't he help but feel nervous for Lu Qiuji? Although Lu relies on the sharpness of his techniques, he and Yu exchange blows back and forth. But if this continues, he will surely lose. At this moment, enraged Yu Yu seems to land critical strikes with every move, constantly shouting. But Lu Qiuji can't be bothered to respond, slightly leaning back into a tactical retreat. He sneered back. You don't even unleash the sword intent that's about to take shape, yet you insist on forcing me to draw my sword. The words had just left his mouth when Yu was heard to respond loudly. Fine, I'll unleash my sword intent. Seeing Yu make hand seals with his left hand and hold his life-bound sword level with his right, a mysterious power surged from the long sword in my hand. At this time, below the martial arts arena, Lu Dongli's natal sword in the storage pouch's waist also vibrated slightly, but Lu Qiuji, who was closest to Yu Yu, while Yu ignored everyone else's reactions, the long sword stood upright, and the azure blue sword energy, like a blue lotus, bloomed and gushed out from the sword body. This is Yu Yu's soon-to-be-formed sword intent. The sword each has its own unique form. Yu's sword intent is a blue lotus built from Yulin fire. At this moment, Lu Qiuji feels the power of Yu Yu's sword intent. He thinks to himself, so the difference between having sword intent and not having it. I understand now. Lu Qiuji speaks faintly. He retracted his long sword, his left hand forming a seal. He placed the long sword behind his back with his right hand. His mind immersed itself in the system, unlocking sword intent. Consume 100,000 experience points. Sword intent level 1. At this time, Yu Yu, wielding a sword, pierced through the air. A sound of a sword tearing through the air echoed. Yu Yu launched his strongest sword strike. He roared in anger in his heart. Senior brother Qiuji, quickly adjust your state of mind, then catch up to my pace. Ningying understood from below. Yu's sword strike leaves no room for retreat. This sword technique is unstoppable, only advancing, never retreating. It is the exclusive technique of the sword venerable, the lone sword. Seeing Yu Yu use this move, Ningying gently raised her right hand. She was about to block the sword for Lu Qiuji. But suddenly, I couldn't help but speak up. Oh Ziej, how many surprises are you planning to give Aunt Ning? On the field, Yu's sword is just inches away from Lu Ziej. Ripples spread out in front of Lu Ziej. Looks gentle, yet it directly blocks Yu Yu's sword. In the next moment, the ripples in front of Yu Yu were like a drop of ink falling into water, gradually spreading and diffusing. That was Lu Ziji's sword intent, an ink-colored sword intent. Observing it, its intensity far surpassed Yu Yu's unformed sword intent. Lu Donglei in the audience saw this and was greatly shocked. The sword intent of my elder brother awakens. And beside her, Xiaoqiu's eyes widen in shock, staring blankly. Lu Chage seems like a fairy who stepped out of an ink painting. On the field, Yu feels that her domineering sword moves are like sinking into a quagmire, unable to advance even slightly. At this moment, Lu Chage lifts his eyes. His left hand gently pinches the tip of the long sword in front of him. Rise. Yu felt a familiar sensation in her heart, only to hear Lu Chage softly say, "Sword intent, isn't it just a matter of having a brain?" At this moment, Yu's realm was half-step sword intent, while the one she faced, Lu Chage, had fully sword intent. Yu's mentality completely collapsed. Impossible, this is impossible. I don't believe it. With her mind in a meltdown, Yu could only wildly strike with her sword, without holding back at all. Meanwhile, Lu Chage still held the sword with his right hand behind his back, casually raising his left hand, and making a swift slash in midair. The sword energy, carrying the intent of the sword, was like an invisible brush. He added another bold stroke to the grand canvas of heaven and earth. Ink-colored sword intent manifested in the air, precisely parrying every attack from Yu. Moments later, Yu, gasping for breath, looked up at Lu Chage, who stood like a towering mountain. He didn't know how many sword strikes he had already parried. With reluctance, Yu poured all her remaining strength into another attack stubbornly persistent. The dark energy surged again. It directly sent Yu's sword flying out of her hand. The sharp sword flew backward and plunged straight into the ground. A gentle breeze passed by. Lu Zong held his still sheathed life sword in his right hand, but wasn't unsheathed yet. Standing with his sword on his back, he pointed with his left hand. He softly said, "You have lost." Why? These 3 words linger in Yu Yu's heart, refusing to leave. He doesn't understand why. He has sealed his cultivation, practiced swordsmanship tirelessly, and constantly fought with masters, risking his life battling fierce beasts. For the sword intent he has given so much. Why'd he still fail? And with that one shout from Qiaojia, I understood it. I grasped the essence of the sword intent. Poor Yu, once again her mindset was affected. After a period of silence, Yu spoke with an extremely sincere tone. I've lost. There's one thing I don't understand. Senior brother Qiaojia, I hope you can help clarify it for me. At this moment, Zhangji, facing away from Yu, stood with his back to her. He activated the spiritual wind technique, holding Not Late behind him. He spoke little, only saying one word. Speak. Yu spoke. Senior brother Zhang Ji, Yu has been reviewing the essays of past masters at Sword Pavilion. Since ancient times, sword cultivators have said, before reaching the 3rd realm, thinking too much about sword intent is often futile. I have also consulted Master Swordlord about this matter. Master Swordlord said that with my aptitude, I could comprehend the sword intent by the 3rd realm. That alone is already an achievement. At this moment, there was a hint of redness on Yu's usually pale face. I couldn't tell whether it was from embarrassment or excitement. She continued speaking. Yu doesn't understand. How did you do it, Qiaojia? How did you manage it? Lu Qiaojia thought for a moment before speaking. Little Yu has previous notes to refer to. There is also Senior Sword Master to ask for guidance. Then it's like standing on the shoulders of giants. He turned his head, gave a glance, and continued. Since you are already standing on the shoulders of giants, why not try to see further? In the afterglow of the setting sun, Lu Ziji's lips curled into a smirk, his tone arrogant. Isn't history meant to be broken? Yu was stunned hearing these words. History is meant to be broken. Lu Donglei outside listened to their conversation. She covered her face, muttering to herself, oh no, he's at it again. Brother's having another episode. Yu already has a bit of a Chunabu personality. Her whole body trembled as if struck by lightning. She bowed slightly to Lu Zioj, saying, so that's it? Senior brother Ziji's mentality. I cannot... Senior brother Zioj, when did you begin comprehending the sword intent? Lu then looked up at the horizon before lowering his gaze and spoke softly. It starts with the sword in my hand. Upon hearing this, Yu and the other 2 were truly shocked. It starts with having a sword. This sentence, Lu Qiaojia said it without a change in expression. Though he relied on the system upgrade, he had accumulated so much experience. It's all accumulated from wielding a sword. That makes perfect sense. Even if Zibao is a cheater, he's a hardworking cheater. Yu has recently witnessed Senior brother Lu's extraordinary feats, and her mind is constantly shaken. And she thought, since it's Senior brother Lu, then everything makes sense. He immediately bent down, he deeply bowed to Lu Chage and said loudly, Yu has been taught well. Ning Yang watched the scene before her and thought to herself, what a harmonious picture. She firmly believed that after this encounter, Yu would be able to fully shape his sword intent. And on the martial arts field, Yu after pointing spoke again, Senior brother J, Actually, Yu has something else to say. Before she finished, Lu Zong felt a little annoyed at this point. What's with all these things? Only hear Yu continue. Senior brother Zhuge, may I borrow your sword to take a look? Yu was indeed very curious about Bu Wan that had never been unsheathed. She was intensely curious about it. But Lu Zage narrowed his eyes and said sharply, it could kill people. After saying that, he raised Bu Wan and examined it carefully. A trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes, and he said in a low voice, Bu Wan hasn't been unsheathed for 9 years. This sword wasn't prepared for you. From Lu Zage's eyes, Yu saw coldness and ruthlessness. Only then did Yu understand and sighed inwardly. Was it because of that incident? Back then, a mysterious demon cultivator wreaked havoc in Qingzhou. Wherever it went, there were piles of bones. Lu Zage's mother, to protect the peace of the region, encountered that mysterious demon cultivator near the Mo sect. The two joined forces, mortally wounding the demonic cultivator, but perished in the process. Thus, Lu Zage's siblings lost their mother. He said, this sword was truly prepared for that demonic cultivator. Nearly a decade's worth of effort was sheathed within. You truly didn't deserve it. Lu Chage, who has awakened the sword intent, once again declares vengeance. The moment the sword leaves its sheath will be the moment I take my revenge. That night on Danking Peak, Lu Chage is walking alone on the path in the forbidden area behind the Mo Sect's mountain. He mutters to himself, Aunt Ning and you will be staying here for a few days. Aunt Ning is fine. He must be refining a flying magic treasure for himself, and that you, this brat, he actually comprehended it 3 times because of the duel with me. 3 times. Just taking a beating from me leads to enlightenment 3 times. He even said that after digesting it, he can completely master the sword intent. The world's protagonist is amazing, huh? I'm a cheater myself. Why admire the protagonist? Besides, I've already made a breakthrough. A new martial art is calling out to me. Thinking this, Lu Zong smiled very lecherously. Taking advantage of the moonlight, Lu Qiuge arrived at the grave mound in the restricted area of the back mountain. He raised his right hand and gently knocked on the tombstone. He asked in the same manner as always, is the offering still here? A wisp of purple smoke slowly drifted out. The purple smoke gathered into a dazed, clueless shadow. The shadow looked at Lu Qiuge with some confusion. At this moment, Lu stood tall and proudly. Offering, have you noticed? What's different about me today? I don't know. Did the offering not hear my words, or did they choose to ignore them? Seems so dazed. Lu Qiuge sighed helplessly and continued. Can't you tell that I broke through? Aren't you going to react? Then the purple smoke dispersed to one side. It was as if a finger was subtly pointing towards Lu Qiuge. Lu Qiuge was somewhat speechless. This offering doesn't even care about him if he doesn't provide blood essence. Generally, those who serve as guardians of sects have conditions, and this mysterious guardian of the Mo sect demands 1 drop of Lu Qiuge's blood essence every month. Lu immediately cut his finger. He forced out a drop of essence blood. As the saying goes, a man's drop of essence blood is worth 10 drops of regular blood. With the essence blood out, Lu Qiuge instantly felt as if his body had been emptied. He felt completely drained. As the essence blood appeared, he saw that the offering of purple smoke. Fen Kai hurriedly swallowed the essence blood. With the essence blood in hand, the offering looked quite satisfied. If it weren't for the fact that the offering gave so much, Lu Qiuge truly wouldn't want to make such a transaction with the offering. In an instant, the tombstone's purple light shone brightly. A whooshing sound rang out. It really looked like a dance party on the grave. A scroll flew out and fell into the road singer's hands. Drinking Kai Decision Volume 2 Purple Grade Mid-Tier. In the Heavenly Xuan realm, the martial arts of each sect are not fixed. Each person cultivates differently. Generally, blue grade is already impressive, but purple grade directly defies the heavens. This drinking Kai Decision technique liquefies the surrounding spiritual energy, then integrate it into yourself as if drinking water. The 108 methods of drinking the northwest wind. Lu Qiuge was thinking about the purple grade lower tier cultivation method. It is also a treasure in the top sect of Qingzhou, the sword sect. And no, that's wrong. Lu Zong froze for a moment and looked. The cultivation method in his hand turned out to be a purple grade mid-tier one. Back then, the first scroll obtained from the offering is actually a purple level low grade, and it has already leveled up. Looking at the dumbfounded offering, it seems there is no answer to be found. At this moment, Lu is guessing. Could it be that each scroll of this technique is of a different level, and the further you go, the more terrifying it becomes? Will it eventually be an orange level technique? If that's the case, then I can still squeeze out a little bit of my vital essence. It's still possible to squeeze out some drops. When Lu Qiuge looked at the offering again, the offering seemed to be staring at him blankly as well. Both of them were just stunned like that. Lu Qiuge noticed that the level of the breathing technique was unusual. His eyes were fixed on the solitary grave offering, and he smiled faintly in a daze. Why don't you give me the remaining scrolls as well? I'll squeeze a few more drops of essence for you. The purple smoke shadow stopped above the grave. It froze in midair. It was like a still image. President Liu had worked with the offering ba for many years. At this moment, the offering seemed to be saying, "You know, I've lost my memory." "I don't know either." Liu Chage waved his hand and then complained about this strange way of getting along. It was like saying goodbye to the offering. Purple smoke rose and twisted comically in the air. It was also like bidding farewell to Liu Cheoj. On the other side of the Mo sect, at this moment Lu Dongli seemed to be defeated. Frustrated, she shouted out, "How could this happen? Why?" Beside her, the little chick Uxiaokyo puffed out its little chest confidently, and with a crooked smile patted Lu Dongli's shoulder and said, "Master, don't cry. In the future, the Mo sect will have me." But the more the little disciple acted this way, the more desperate Lu Dongli became. The Moist school already has a leader like that. That's quite enough. If we get another disciple like this, they'd be beaten to death before they even left the door. Looking at this arrogant little thing, it seems she's already inherited 3/10 of her brother's essence. Lu Dongli thought for a moment, and decided she needed to protect her in a different way. Lu Dongli grabbed the little chick's shoulders with both hands. She spoke with a serious expression. "From now on, Xiaoqiu, whenever you go down the mountain, you are not allowed to say you're Lu Dongli's disciple. You should say you're Liu Chage's disciple." The little chick stared wide-eyed at her incredibly serious master. His mind was full of question marks. A short while later, Xiaoji's eye was thrown out of the room by Lu Dongli, who grabbed him by the collar. Lu Dongli helplessly thought to himself, "Xiaoqiu, this is something I had no choice but to do." When he was a child, his older brother told him stories about Lu Dongli. There were many geniuses, but they had no other hobbies. They only liked showing off and slapping faces. What kind of anti-inflammatory shout was that? Don't underestimate the young when they're poor. Anyway, it's just hitting the disciple, then hitting the master. Hit the younger generation, then continue hitting the ancestor. Anyway, it's just following the lineage in the family tree. Looking at Xiaoqiu hopping away happily. No one will come to fight because of Xiaoqiu. No one would dare to challenge me because of Xiaoqiu. Why don't we adopt Xiaoqiu as your sibling now? Lu Dongli said the decision to adopt is made. Everything should be handled cautiously. A moment later, she thought of Xiaoqiu's cute and naive appearance in her mind again. She was reluctant to part with this little disciple. Lu Dongli said. Her throat still suggested increasing the workload. Since they hit the young, they should hit the old as well. Then, let's just make sure those people can't even defeat the young. Having thought of this solution, she immediately felt much more energized. Lu Dongli then swore an oath to the moon. "From today, Aokyu will be my closed-door disciple Lu Dongli. I will no longer take any more disciples. Xiaoqiu is never allowed to leave the mountain unless her training meets the standards." Shut the door to the trouble she caused. I was about to say my name. But then I thought, no. What if I swear on the life of my brother Lu Dongli. After making the decision, I regretted and thought of it again. Another disciple of mine. I can't afford to teach another disciple like Lu Bing. Lu Dongli treats her as a beloved apprentice, but she wants to be a good sister-in-law. At this moment, Lu Chage, who was cultivating under the bright moon, sneezed inexplicably. "Who is talking bad about me?" Lu Xioj obtained a new cultivation technique from the mysterious demon cultivator's offering place. Cultivation technique of a new realm. He couldn't wait to start cultivating. In Qianji drinking technique, he cultivated through meditation. Every small cycle of energy circulation would grant him a certain amount of experience points. He was currently circulating the technique. Lu Chage's body was faintly surrounded by a thin layer of light blue mist. This technique was drawing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, quickly accumulating experience points. It was cleansing his body. A system notification came through. Experience 1000, experience 10000. To others, it seemed like Lu was in this state at the moment. It looks like the appearance of an immortal floating in the air, but in reality practicing this skill is extremely painful. It's so painful that you wish for death. Before long, a mouthful of blood spurted from Lu Chage's mouth. He couldn't continue circulating the skill. He couldn't help but curse inwardly. What a ridiculous breathing technique. It should be called menstrual pain instead. Lu Xioj silently thought to himself, "That's enough for tonight. I can't risk my life for a little experience." He then lay down flat, looking up at the sky and mocking himself, cultivating and accumulating experience points. Can't there be a more comfortable way? If the offerings could provide some dual cultivation techniques, that would be so much better. Then his mind wandered to certain images. That's really the case, wouldn't that be wrong? Wouldn't it just get drained dry? At that moment, a streak of light flashed across the sky. It was, in the blink of an eye, the light raced towards Lu Cheoj. It turned out that Ning Ying had brought you to find Lu Cheoj. Lu Chage stood up, looked up at the two, and spoke. "Aunt Ning, what brings you here?" It turned out that Ning Ying came to find Lu Chage. because she had just finished refining the leaf boat. She was about to return to the sect. Upon hearing that Aunt Ning was leaving, Lu Chage couldn't help but feel. When Ning Ying showed off in front of her, Ning Ying gently stroked Lu Chage's forehead like a loving mother. Then, she took out a flying magical artifact specially crafted for Lu Chage. After Lu Chage scanned it with the system, it was a single leaf boat. The single leaf boat, a means of transportation. Generally, it's only a high-grade yellow rank item, but Ning Ying worried about Lu Chage's safety, so she also refined an array formation within it. Aunt Ning truly loves me. Seeing Lu Chage's thoughtful expression, Ning Ying asked, "Don't you like it?" Lu Chage snapped back to his senses and smiled. "Not very fond of it. I just vaguely feel like it's a bit unusual." Although the system detected a large formation inside, Ning Ying didn't explain it. There's no need for me to immediately mention Aunt Ning's good intentions. Ning Ying looked at Lu Chaoji, rolling her eyes. Could this guy have a talent for artifact forging? Quickly took out a jade slip, given to Lu Chage. Lu Chage turned back and tried refining weapons. Maybe he really has a talent for it. Lu Chage was taken aback. Can this also be learned from a skill book? As expected, living off someone else's achievements feels so good. Under the dim moonlight, Ning Ying turned around and bid farewell to Lu Chage. Yu treated as a backdrop, kept waving to Lu Chage. "Senior brother and me?" Lu Chage impatiently waved to Yu. He said in a low voice, I know. Let's go. Under the moonlight, the two dashed away like shooting stars, speeding into the distance. In an instant, a cold gleam shot through the air. It passed by Lu Chage's side. It was a flying sword delivering a message. It bore the name of Jing Jimin. Lu Chage stood with his hands clasped behind his back. A trace of coldness appeared in his gaze. Jing Jimin, you have quite the nerve. There are 4 top-tier sects in the Tiangxuan realm. The Sword Sect is one of those 4 top-tier sects. It is the strongest sect in Qingzhou. The Sword Sect commands 300 subordinate sects. These sects are divided into upper, middle, and lower sects. And then there's the most sect. I'm at the very bottom of the 100 schools of thought. Feng is right. I'm the bottom of the bottom. And this Jing is just a tiny bit above the Mohis school within the 100 schools of thought. It's in the lower middle range of the lower 100 schools. Lu Ji then sarcastically remarked, lower middle range, how impressive. The Jingjin sect and the Moment sect. The Qushui sect is one of the 3 sects coexisting within 100 miles of this area. Previously, this area, within 100 miles, was entirely under the control of the Moment sect. It was the Moment sect that originally took this sect in. But after the death of Lu Chage's mother, the Jingjin sect began to rise with a momentum of turning the tables. Thinking about this, while looking at the flying sword delivering the message, I couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed. Lu Qiuge raised his hand and lightly gestured. The flying sword then hovered in front of him. President Lu crooked his mouth and smiled lightly. He used his divine sense to carve the reply's contents into the letter. With the ink-colored sword intent empowering it, the flying sword returned along its original path. At this moment, within the Jingjin sect, the leader of Qushu sect, Lin Long, is currently plotting with He Tu, the leader of Jingjin sect. They are scheming to seize Mo sect's cultivation resources. The flying sword that transmitted the message earlier to inform Mo sect about the gathering of the 3 sect leaders. Within 100 miles, these are the only 3 cultivation sects. We are all neighbors. They are also competing for benefits. Now the Mo sect has only 1 visible member left, Lu Chaoji, who has reached the great perfection of the initial stage. The other 2 sects have naturally been tempted. At this moment, that flying sword suddenly returned. He too sensed something. He grabbed the flying sword. The 2 of them couldn't help but wonder if Lu Chage was already trembling in fear. He too picked up the flying sword with his right hand and lightly tapped it with his left. A stream of divine consciousness emanated from the flying sword. It formed a large red character in the air. The 2 of them stared blankly at it. The leader of Qushu sect muttered, somewhat speechless, look, this kid. Is he replying to some subordinate's article? Inside the Golden Gate Hall, He too slammed his palm on the table in anger. His face turned purple with rage. Seeing He too's anger, Lin Long fanned the flames and said, Mastery, this kid is so disrespectful. We'll meet at the salmon gathering. Let's give him a good scare. The 2 of them began discussing the operational procedures for the salmon gathering. At this time, at the most school's Danking Peak, Lu Xiage's and Lu Dongli's siblings sat opposite each other, discussing the matter of the salmon gathering. Lu Dongli's brother, 3 days later is the day the heads of the 3 schools gather. Should I accompany you? No need. Lu Xiage took a sip of spiritual tea, with a look of disdain said, with your skill in concealing your cultivation, I'll take you. If others see your low cultivation, they might underestimate my Moist school. With Lu Dongli's approach, it's better not to go at all. Lu Dongli continued to ask, what if I hide less and reveal a little more? Do you think it's feasible? Lu Chage shook his head and said, it's not feasible. You should just stay home. At that moment, A faint spiritual energy fluctuation came from somewhere in Danking Peak, a subtle fluctuation of spiritual energy, driven by spiritual energy. A gentle breeze circled the mountains. Lu Xioj released a spiritual sense and immediately noticed, "This wind, it feels pure and alluring." Lu Dong lightly said, "Huff, it's Lu Bing breaking through." The Lu siblings were discussing the matter of the three gates gathering when they simultaneously sensed the spiritual energy fluctuation of their disciple, Lu Bing, exiting seclusion. At this moment, Lula said sharply, "How did this girl break through so quickly? She didn't even lock herself away for 30 to 50 years. I'm really so angry." Lu Xioj looked troubled and said, "You dislike your top disciple so much. Look at my top disciple's looks. Why are you so unsatisfied?" He then pointed to the dark pavilion beside them. Hearing this, Lu Dongli jumped up like a startled rabbit. She abruptly stood up. He slammed both hands heavily on the table, angrily saying, "I can see that you have feelings for her. Absolutely won't allow this." As he rushed behind Lu Chage. He grabbed the president's face and started rubbing it wildly. This must be what deep sibling affection looks like. Lu Dongli silently thought to herself at this moment, "Damn it, why is the eldest disciple I took in someone who wants to be my sister-in-law?" But then again, the eldest senior brother of the Mo sect, Hai Ting, has a tragic background, and as the second senior sister of the Mo sect, Lu Bing, her situation isn't much better either. Lu Bing was cute since childhood. At the age of 6, she was sold to a brothel by her parents. She was kept by the brothel madam for 5 years. The madam taught Lu Bing many things: how to read and write, and how to serve men. That night, it was her 11th birthday. The brothel was crowded inside and out. They gazed up with greedy eyes, watching Lu Bing on the stage. They laughed and made bids in the auction. That night, the brothel's madam was auctioning. Lu Bing C. Knight writes, "A cold decided her fate tonight." Below, the enthusiastic men kept raising the price, showing off their wealth. But on stage, Lu Bing's heart grew colder. Over the years, Lu Bing had considered rebelling and escaping, but in reality it's not that easy. Sometimes I fantasize, like what the books describe, that there would be a young master, like a god descending from heaven, to rescue me and take me away from here. But when I'm awake, she knows those are all lies written by authors. At this moment, a bold voice rang out from the crowd. 10,000 teal. The crowd suddenly fell silent and automatically parted. They made way for the newcomer. The newcomer was none other than the Lu siblings. Lu Chaoj grinned with a crooked smile. His gaze was sharp as he surveyed the entire crowd. Then he said to the old man on stage, "I'll take this girl for 12,000. The crowd that heard this clearly burst into laughter. This person must be a fool. Must have too much money to burn. The old man, facing the sudden happiness, felt a little dizzy. He pushed forward instinctively, pushing Lu Bin towards Lu Xioj. Excitedly said, "What are you still standing there for? Hurry to your master." Just like that. That night on Lu Bing's 11th birthday, Lu Xioj descended into Lu Bing's heart like a... When Lu Chage took the contract of Lu Bing's servitude from Lao Tang. Afterward, President Lu looked at the contract in his hand. After thinking for a moment, under everyone's astonished gaze, he tore the tract to shreds on the spot, and with a carefree gesture he said, "From now on you're free." While everyone else thought that this young and wealthy Lu Chage was probably a fool, in Lu Bing's heart, the young master was not a fool at all. "From today onward I will follow the young master. Whether there is a contract or not, what's the harm?" When the rich and extravagant Lu Chage purchased Lu Bing from the brothel, this deeply planted in the young girl Lu Bingka's heart the image of a savior. When Lu Xioj reached out to Lu Bing and said, "Let's go," just as little Lu Bing reached out to take Lu Xioj's hand, Lu Jelly in disguise immediately rushed forward, pulling little Lu Bing and smilingly saying, "Little sister, let me hold your hand." The three of them walked out of the brothel in the moonlight. They left the brothel, and Lu Bing began a new life. The city was celebrating a lantern festival. Young Lu Bing gazed at the lanterns, lost in thought. So beautiful. It was the first time she had stepped out of the brothel that had confined her for 5 years. Lu Dongli noticed Xiao Lu Bing's emotions from the side. She spoke, "You will see even more beautiful things in the future." Following the Lu siblings, Lu Chage and his sister, they saw the lanterns throughout the city. But no matter how beautiful the lanterns were, none of them were as beautiful as this young Master Lu. Meanwhile, Lu Chage was lost in thought. The most important thing is that there's also a line in the attribute panel that says, "There's a certain chance of triggering a hidden plot." 12,000 copper coins were worth it. Among the Mohist, Lu Xioj, annoyed by his sister, slammed the table and demanded that Lu Dongli stop playing around. He needed to save some face in front of his disciples. At this time, Lu Bing's spiritual energy fluctuations are becoming increasingly intense. Lu Dongli was startled. No good, that girl is about to break through. On the other side, in a hidden cave on Danking Peak of the Moas school, the figure of a young woman in a long dress slowly appeared. Her figure was graceful and her skin was as white as snow. A pair of jade-like legs were bathed in moonlight. Finally, the first realm. I haven't seen you for a long time, young master, Lu Bing murmured in her soft voice, saying. Not long after Lu Bing left the cave, she heard a low, magnetic voice echoing across Danking Peak. Lu Bing, come to my bamboo hut. That was the voice of Lu Chioj. Lu Bing's face bloomed like a peach blossom upon hearing this. Smiling brightly, her eyes even squinted as she replied, "It's young master." She used her spiritual energy to perform her movement technique. She headed to Lu Chioj's bamboo hut at the fastest speed. This is the most basic form of home delivery. The argument between the Lu siblings inside the bamboo hut was still ongoing. Only Haiting quietly stood by attending to the two of them. Lu Dongli was a bit annoyed at this moment. If you didn't bring me to the three gates, fine. But you're bringing Lu Bing instead? Lu Zong stared blankly at his sister and said, Dongli, you jealous? The sister was stunned by his words, then slowly replied, who would be jealous? Then, with an angry expression, she said she wanted to hear what her brother's thoughts were. As for Lu Chioj's thoughts, the gathering of the three factions was truly to demonstrate strength. Bringing his eldest disciple, Haiting had no presence at all. Bringing Lu Dongli was another matter of keeping everything hidden. After thinking it over, only Lu Bing can showcase the elegance of the Mo sect. The more beautiful the woman by the sect master's side, the more it reflects the strength of the sect. This is a consensus across the world. Look at Master Mei from the Taobao sect, Master Liu from the Jingdong sect. Which of their secretaries isn't both strong and beautiful? Lu Dongli listened and looked doubtful. Tabamanai Jingdongman? What kind of nonsense is this? Lu Chioj said to his sister that he was planning to bring Lu Bing to the Three Gates gathering. Not long after, that pure and tempting breeze blew into the bamboo house. When Lu Chioj's call was heard, Lu Yun turned and used his technique. Lu Bing, arriving at top speed, said, Disciple Lu Bing, greets Master and Grandmaster. At this moment, her rather sizable chest rose and fell. On her flawlessly clear face, several glistening beads of sweat clung. Even her breathing was pitifully endearing. Those eyes kept glancing towards Lu Chioj. After a while, I realized there was Haiting beside me. I quickly greeted him. Oh, senior brother is here too? Lu Chioj glanced at Lu Bing. Every time he looked at her, it feels like I'm back on Earth, with the vibe of a network photo shoot. That aura is just perfectly matched. At this moment, Lu Bing is thinking, the young master's composure is amazing. Breathing, posture, voice. He's already used all the tricks from the brothel, yet the young master remains unmoved. If only I could avoid master, and be alone with the young master for a while. Lu Chioj cleared his throat and said, Lu Bing, now that you've left seclusion, in 3 days' time you will accompany me to the salmon gathering. Lu Bing, upon hearing this, her eyes immediately lit up. This is precisely the opportunity. She obediently answered. It's Master's senior apprentice brother. This is exactly what she had longed for. The opportunity to be alone with Lu Chioj. And watching everything from the side, Lu Dongli gritted her teeth, filled with intense resentment. This damn disciple is smiling too happily. The next moment, he smashed the teacup in front of him. He abruptly stood up. Haiting and Lu Chioj were too shocked to speak. Damn it. Why does this world have to have such a creature as a sister-in-law? Then, Lu Dongli angrily strode out of the bamboo hut. Lu Zong and Haiting were left stunned. Lu Chioj murmured to himself, have I offended her? Unexpectedly, Haiting, who usually never speaks, chimed in. It seems you have offended her quite badly, master. Hearing Haiting's voice, Lu Chioj started to act like a disciple. Now you were being clever. You even remembered to remind your master. Haiting awkwardly waved his hand. No, it's not like that, master. Let me pour you some tea. And when Lu Bing saw that the master had left, he was momentarily dazed. What a great opportunity. He quickly made a move and stepped forward, taking the teapot from Haiting. No need to trouble yourself, master. I'll refill master's tea. The next moment, the art of tea ceremony came naturally to Luo Bing's hands, blending the alluring techniques she learned in the brothel. While refilling the tea, she seemingly unintentionally displayed her charm. Little did she know, Lu Chioj completely ignored Lu Bing's small movements at this time. He was still thinking about what had happened to his sister just now. Being ignored repeatedly made little Lu Bing take a deep breath, but in reality, Lu Bing's small movements were all in the eyes of Mr. Lu. The audience may be wondering why Lu Dongli is so brother complex. Do you get it? Lu Chioj, who noticed every little move of Luo Bing, took a sip of spiritual tea deep in thought. Although Lu Bing's tea skills are outstanding, in her past life she had seen all kinds of storms and was now immune to all poison. In Lu Lu Chaoji, who is completely unaffected by her temptations, that indifferent gaze, her elegant temperament, the way everything about her is so captivating. If the young master is moved just because of his small tricks, then is that still the young master she deeply loves? Thinking this, she secretly made a resolution. Lu Bing, you have to work harder. Charge forward for love. At this moment, Lu Zong saw Lu Bing, whose eyes were shining. He felt a bit guilty. Seeing this posture, this girl is determined to conquer me. And for the next 3 days, Lu Bing stayed in the bamboo hut at Lu Chage's place for various legitimate or illegitimate reasons. At one point, she caused Hiding to lose his job. When Hiding was wiping the table, she snatched it from him and demonstrated her tea-making technique using the collar to wipe the table. When Lu Chage was taking a bath, she grabbed the basin and showed off the tea art of wetting the body with half-transparent technique. When Hiding changed the sheets, she grabbed the blanket to perform it. The tea art of the jade legs making the bed. However, in the eyes of Lu Chaoji, all of it ended in failure. Just like that, through playful banter, 3 days quickly passed. At this moment, Lu Zieges is absorbing spiritual energy from heaven and earth using his Kai. No, he's not absorbing experience. Standing beside it, Sao Lu Bing, who always follows Lu Zieges, secretly sighed, truly worthy of being young master. His cultivation is like that of an immortal. After a short while, Lu Zieges opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "Let's go, we're leaving." He then took out his flying apparatus. With Lu Bing's agreement, the two of them boarded a small, light boat and set off. At this time, the sun was rising in the east. This was the first time they had ridden together like this. Lu Bing was so shy she covered her face. Her heart was pounding wildly. Lu Bing looked at Mr. Lu's tall, straight figure from behind. She could smell the masculine scent on Mr. Lu. For a moment, she was somewhat dazed. She couldn't help but imagine. There were only 2 people in this carriage, herself and young Master Tong. Clearly it was sharing a bed. At the thought of this, she shyly covered her eyes with her hands. Lu Zieges turned around and asked calmly, "What is it?" Lu Bing blushed even more. She had accidentally shouted out just now. Under Lu Zieges' questioning, she quickly explained and flattered her, showering Lu Zieges with excessive praise. Lu Zieges spoke using the tone of his past life. Okay, stop licking." These spoken, Lu Bing was slightly stunned. Licking? Young master means? His eyes darted around. It must be the meaning Lao Wu mentioned. This happiness came too suddenly. I couldn't help but stick out my own red tongue, just a tiny. Then I gently licked my upper lip. Lu Zieges was startled and quickly shouted, "Jinxin?" He sighed inwardly. Childhood education really affects one's whole life, huh? A moment later, Lu Bing, who had just been a little embarrassed, held a cup of spirit spring water. "Sir, would you like some spirit spring water?" Lu Zieges took the cup, sipped it, and asked, "You really like calling me Sir?" Hearing this, Lu Bing was silent for a moment before, deciding to go for broke. She tentatively spoke up. Before she could finish, Lu Chage was immediately choked by Lingquan. She quickly cast a spell, preventing Lu Bing from speaking further. This girl's childhood education is completely ruined. But that being said, men always like to be the boss. Lu Zieges brought Lu Bing to the meeting point of the 3 gates, the appointed place, Wanju Peak. There's a pavilion on the mountaintop. That's where they were to meet. He arrived at the pavilion with Luo Bing right on time. But he found no one there. I can't help but think, these guys are trying to intimidate me. While Lu Zieges was lost in thought, Lu Bing watched 2 streaks of light flash across the horizon. 2 people were arriving on flying magic treasures. They arrived at the pavilion on Wanju Peak. Lu Bing wasn't sure whether she should go to greet them. She glanced at Luge, noticing Lu Bing's gaze. Lu Chage, don't bother with them. They're just disciples sent to deceive us. Lu Bing, who had understood this, also looked great. These guys are trying to intimidate the young master. Ting. But Lu Chage lost 2 detection signals. According to the feedback from the system, the 2 visitors are not E2 and Lin Long. They are their disciples. Therefore, they deliberately retreated, only sending disciples here. This is their response to Lu Chage. Lu Chage's expression remained unchanged. He smiled faintly and said, "Just as I expect." The 2 of them, upon seeing Lu Chage, still had the thought lingering in their minds. The master asked me to give this kid a lesson. I have to perform well. The 2 of them spoke in unison. You are the leader of the most sect. Before he finished speaking, Lu Chage turned around, facing away from the 2. The spirit wind technique quietly activated. President Lu looked up at the sky and let out a soft sigh. The whole motion was smooth and flowing. If Lu Dongli had been there at that moment, she would have immediately realized. Brother, you're about to have an episode. The workers who arrived and saw this scene, they both had a smug look on their faces. Why do they start acting all high and mighty over a small disagreement? The warning hasn't even been fully given yet. Seeing that Lu Chage was putting on airs at this moment, the two exchanged a glance. Immediately they executed the second plan. Together they saluted and loudly said, "We disciple Zhong Chao and Shin Qingqing. Greetings, sect leader Lu." Polite and respectful. His tone is serious, but the more so, the more nauseating it is. Lu Ziege still turned his back to the two. He didn't make a sound. If he doesn't speak, this greeting will have to continue. After a long while, Lu Ziege ignored the two of them. Embarrassed, they could only get up themselves, but unexpectedly their bodies felt heavy. They couldn't straighten their backs. They couldn't lift their heads, as if something was suppressing them. Lu Ziege, using the power of water, at this moment tilted his head and smiled wryly, thinking to himself, "Playing mind games with me? I can play with any water I want to." To the side. The blood in the body seems to be pulled by some force, causing the body to feel unusually heavy. It's truly strange. Lu Chaoji saw that it was almost done, so he released his control over the blood. That mysterious force dissipated, fell to the ground while chasing. At this moment, Lu Chage's incredible methods were witnessed firsthand. Lu Bing could only feel a shock in her heart. She was unwilling to accept not being able to successfully humiliate Lu Chaoji. One plan failed, another would be devised. She moved forward, preparing to directly intimidate and notify Lu Chaoji. The power distribution within a 100-mile radius. The cultivation resources have been decided upon by the two sect leaders, but the Moist school only. Before he could finish speaking, Lu Zi gently raised his hand, snapped his fingers, and pointed at the man's right leg. That mysterious and terrifying power reappeared. The man's right leg exploded directly. In an instant, his right leg shattered, blood splattering onto the woman's face beside him. Fear was written all over the woman's face. What is happening? Lu Chage used the power of water to point in midair. He snapped the right leg of his adversary Zhong Qiu. He also found the man's screams to be unbearably loud. With a thought, the power of water surged again. It sealed Zhong's mouth shut, leaving him only able to make faint whimpering sounds. Lu Zige's rash in Lu Bing's eyes was incredibly domineering and boundless. Only her master could have come up with such a thing. Meanwhile, Zonko, with his right foot crippled, twitched. He hurriedly looked at Shin Qingqing, who was standing beside him, her face pale with fright. "Come and stop his bleeding." But Shin Qingqing was truly frightened by Lu Chage's violent methods. She could only cautiously approach Zhong Yu. She feared that if she got too close to Zhong Cho, Lu Chage would explode her head with a single finger. How the two left, Lu Chage took Lu Bing into the pavilion, sat down, and instructed Lu Bing, "Watch tea." She then ignored the two disciplined show-off duo. Only then did Shin Qingqing dare approach and stop the bleeding, treating Zhong Chao's wounds. After a long while, the treatment was completed, and Zhong Chao's injuries were temporarily alleviated. Shin Qingqing let out a deep breath and wiped her forehead. It was only then that she realized, the rumored useless sect leader Lu Chage? How could he have such terrifying strength? Lu Chage felt Shin Qingqing's gaze. After taking a small sip of the spiritual tea, she casually glanced at the two of them and said lightly, "Thirsty?" Upon hearing this, Shin Qingqing was struck as if by lightning and suddenly realized, this wasn't about asking whether they were thirsty. This was clearly implying, "Aren't you leaving waiting for tea?" The next moment, dragging the seriously injured Zhongyu, they fled without looking back. Seeing this, Lu Bing, smiling, refilled Lu Zige's tea and said, "It seems that woman understood the sect leader's meaning." Lu Chaoji responded indifferently, "I'm just one step away from writing. If you don't leave, I'll kill you on my face." Lu Bing playfully stuck out her fresh, bright red tongue. She replied, "I was too talkative. My apologies, Master." At this moment, Master Lu saw the obedient Lu Bing speak up. "Sit down. It's not like there are outsiders. The scenery here is quite nice. In a little while, the people from Jingjing Gate and Kushui Gate should be arriving." Just like that, the three of them gathered in this place where the three gates meet and chatted leisurely. Lu Bing continued to be a sycophant, showering praise nonstop, secretly glancing at Lu Chaoji. In her small world inside her heart, Lu Chage seemed to be everything to her. The poetic girl with deep feelings. Perhaps many years from now, looking back, the small red flowers blooming beside the pavilion. On the other side, Shin Qingqing running away with hatred in her heart, still trapped in the fear of that moment. Edzia, that guy is definitely a monster. I must run quick. Run back quickly. Run back and tell the master. And behind the poor Zhong Chao? He really couldn't take it anymore if struggling to speak. "Junior sister. Actually, you can fly with your sword." Shin Qingqing was stunned upon hearing this. She was just scared silly by Lu Chage. She even forgot her identity as a cultivator. When she snapped back to her senses, she shouted loudly, "Don't to me." She then activated her flying magic tool and quickly flew off. Soon after, at the entrance of Jingjin sect, she had never flown this fast in her entire life. Immediately, disciples guarding the area came forward. Seeing the heavily injured Zhong Chao, they said, Second master, how did you get so badly injured? Especially upon seeing the scratch marks on Zhang Chou's face. They added, how despicable, even other cultivators resort to scratching faces. Inside the Jingjin Gate's main hall, Lin Long and he too, the two sect leaders, were laughing and fantasizing about the arrangements for cultivation resources in this area within 100 miles. Until the two of them saw Zhang Chou being escorted in, one of the disciples shouted, "Master bad. Lu Chage is causing trouble and injuring people." Second senior brother's face has been scratched up. Hearing this, he too, the sect leader of the Jinjin sect, shouted angrily, "Damn Lu, you have some nerve." Lin Long glanced at E2, who immediately entered a state of fury, and thought to herself, he's a bit too hot-headed. He too walked up to Zhang Chou, and threw a spirit pill into Zhang Chou's mouth. As soon as the pill entered his mouth, Zhang Chou's complexion became slightly more flushed. Seems the elixir is quite effective. He too furrowed his brows and said in a deep voice, "Quickly tell me, what exactly happened?" Zhang Chou exchanged a glance with Shin Qingqing. Then they took turns, describing the situation. Listening to the description from the two disciples, the two sect masters' expressions grew grave. He too asked, his face dark, "You mean with a casual gesture? He crippled your right leg?" Zhang Chou glanced at his crippled right leg and continued, "Furthermore, this disciple sensed something else. There was a power of heaven and earth emanating from Lu Zioj." What kind of congratulatory image? Lin Long couldn't sit still upon hearing this. Instantly he couldn't sit still again. The power of heaven and earth? That's a power that can only be possessed by a practitioner after the Tao of heaven has awakened. At this moment. Meanwhile, Shin Qingqing also spoke up. Master mentioned just a moment ago that within 100 miles of here, a genius has been born, and it triggered the 9 heavens decree for salvation. Everyone should have heard it, right? He too and Lin Long seemed to have thought of something at the same time. Then they looked at each other in horror. That 9 heavens decree for salvation really was alarming. He too had also rushed to the scene at that time, curious to know who triggered the decree for salvation. If it was from a small sect or faction, I must bring that person under the teachings of Jing Jin. But on the way there, I sensed the oppressive aura of a great practitioner. It was the protector of the one who issued the 9 heavenly Tao salvation order. Terrified, he too immediately turned around and fled on his sword. Now that I think about it, that spiritual initiator from that day is probably this Lu Chage. Not only has he gained the power of the heavenly Tao, but also, thinking of this, he too's expression completely collapsed. Someone is behind Lu Chage. A powerful cultivator is supporting him from behind. No wonder Lu Chage dared to reply with just read. No wonder he dared to break his disciple's legs. He too suddenly collapsed onto his chair. His face fell, realizing he'd made a huge mistake. In his desperate anxiety, he was already sweating profusely. Lin Long's eyes flickered with guilt. He suddenly wondered if he'd chosen the wrong side. The 9 heavens salvation decree. That was the 9 heavens salvation decree. You know, a prodigy who can trigger the 9 thunder Tao edict of heaven. As long as there is no interruption along the way, they are bound to become great cultivators. Lin Long cast a subtle glance at E2. Her eyes were filled with disdain and disgust. This filthy man ruined me. He too, feeling faint after the ordeal, spoke up immediately. Summon all the elders for a meeting to discuss how many resources to concede to the Mohists. Ignoring the shocked gazes of the disciples, he massaged his temples, suffering a terrible headache. He silently lamented in his heart. Seeing this, Lin Long couldn't help but think to herself, men are really something else, hard and soft. On the peak of Wanju Mountain, soft sunlight bathed the mountaintop pavilion. A system prompt arrived. Lu Zioj opened the system interface and discovered his reputation had broken 500. New additions, the fear of the Jingjin Gate and the Qshui Gate. Lu Zioj mused, stroking his chin. Not bad. It seems that the Jingjin sect and Qshui sect have already received my signal for a beating, but they seem a bit reluctant. Unfortunately, smaller sects have lower reputation points. It took so long just to increase by this little bit. Trying to raise the Mo sect's reputation to 1,000 by relying on the Jingjin sect and Qshui sect is obviously unrealistic. Lu Zong was lost in thought. He kept eyeing these two little lambs. Shaved, they were of little value. He had to think of something bigger. Thinking this, Lu Chage took a small sip of his spiritual tea. Beside him, Lu Bing, holding her little face with both hands, looked like a lovesick girl at this moment. She kept repeating in her mind, the person on the road is like a jade, an unmatched gentleman. After closing the system interface, Lu Chage turned to Lu Bing, who had been staring at her. Is there something on my face? Upon hearing this, Lu Bing actually nodded dumbly. After realizing it, he quickly waved his hand and said, No, young master, I just spaced out. Lu Chage looked at her flustered expression. He felt slightly helpless. How can this girl get so nervous over just a casual question? There's nothing I can do. In his life, he was a super rich, high-status person. This life he's convinced he's the chosen one, arrogant through and through. Such a person simply cannot understand the feelings of someone who feels inferior, and that careful hope. For Luba, he cannot feel that kind of palpitation. He even less understands. For some people, love is like a thief in the night. The scene shifts to Momendanking Peak. Soft childish voice, giggles and laugh. Echoing through the mountains, Lu Dongli had just assigned Xiaoqiu some tasks on cultivation and luck. At this moment, she was absent-mindedly daydreaming. I wonder what my brother and that wicked disciple are up to now? I can't help but start to overthink. If they dare to mess things up, I'll tear them apart. After a long pause, Lu Dongli finally reacted. Right, my brother went to discuss resource allocation. As an elder of the Mo sect, I should be more concerned about the gathering of the three sects. I wonder how the discussions went. Xifu. You see how lucky I am, right? Bisaiku him suddenly spoke to Lu Dongli. My little chick is losing its baby teeth. He spoke with a slight lisp at this moment. Lu Dongli replied casually. Axao hung his head, slightly mischievously saying, I feel a genius. That definitely won't be wrong, otherwise just don't transport it. I told you to transport it, so transport it. Lu Jili walked forward, patting Sajazai's head and said, Xiaoqiu raised a small hand to cover his forehead. He had no choice but to try again. He grumbled in his heart, it's clearly Master who is distracted. Why is it always me who gets beaten? Seeing the chick circulating its inner spiritual energy again, Lu Dongli couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. This disciple at the closed door is indeed clever. In just a few days, they have mastered the method of circulation. Not bad, not bad. This child is teachable. Momendanking Peak stopped. Lu Dongli looked completely satisfied. Looking at Ziba, this closing disciple, after the lessons, Exaki became lively again. Exaki, with her bright round eyes, said, Master, look how diligently have you been studying. Can I, like the second senior sister, accompany Master Xibo down the mountain? Lu Dongli, upon hearing this, thought with a dark face, why does everyone? She always wanted to follow her older brother. This really frustrated her a bit, but she quickly got over it, because when Lu Dongli was young, she was also a little tail following her older brother. No wonder others were like this. Then she looked at Xiaoqiu seriously and said, in general, you can't go down the mountain. Xiaojuan tilted its questioning little head, asking incomprehensibly, Huh, why? Lu Dongli patiently explained, because you are my most cherished disciple. Sahyuan became even more confused. Master, why is a cherished disciple? We can't go down the mountain. Lu Dongli spread his hands, looking slightly helpless, and said, because there's no gate. Xiaoji and Xiaoqiu could only draw circles in resentment and said, so closed door disciple means there's no gate. Winter Peer, who believes in living a self-determined life, saw such a small child and couldn't help but wonder if being so harsh on oneself was too much. Just as she was about to comfort the young disciple, unexpectedly, the little chick who had been drawing circles suddenly stood up. At that moment, it seemed as if the small body was filled with determination. With a smile as wicked as Lu Chage's, he said, I understand now, father. Is this the ambush that Master Xi was talking about? Lu Dongli, upon hearing this, asked with a slight tremor, what else did your Shibo tell you? At this moment, Exoji turned his head and said loudly, the ambush isn't important. What matters is that people must understand one thing in the future. Lu Dongli felt an ominous premonition rise in her heart. Well, what does that mean? Seeing the little chick frown slightly, she imitated Lu Chage's manner. She slowly, the dormant dragon stirs, and with a roar, it shakes the mountains. In the next moment, it was as if from that small body, full of energy, laying low to stir up the world later. A perfect luge copy. While the little chick is still learning Lu Chage's cool demeanor, Lu Dongli has already surpassed him. The little chick turns its head alertly, quickly raising both hands to protect his forehead, thinking he was about to be hit on the head again. Unexpectedly, Lu Dongli picked Xiaoqiu up and said, Xiaoqiu, you should stay with Master on the mountain for the rest of your life. Just as Xiaoqiu's young heart was about to break, a stream of light flashed across the sky above Danking Peak of the Moist School. Lu Dongli wondered if his elder brother had returned. Taking a closer look, it's actually someone from the Sword Sect. Lu Dongli was slightly surprised. Why would someone from the Sword Sect be here? The Sword Sect is a super sect, and its disciples are divided into outer sect disciples, inner sect disciples, and true inherited disciples. Embroidered on the clothes are a bronze sword, a silver sword, and a gold sword. This disciple of the Sword Sect, who suddenly appeared above the Most Sect, has a golden sword embroidered on the chest of his long robe. This also symbolizes his identity as a true disciple of the Sword Sect. At this moment, it's unclear why the Sword Sect has sent someone. Cautious Lu Dongli is wondering if his cultivation is enough to fight him. The true disciple of the Sword Sect, who came from afar, did not descend. His feet remained on the flying sword, suspended in midair before the Danking Peak. After a moment, the person stood with his hands behind his back, and gently tapped the tip of his toe. The flying sword beneath him emitted a loud. It spread throughout the entire danking peak. It seemed to be saying arrogantly, "The true inheritance of the sword sect is here. Shouldn't you come and greet it?" Lu Dongli looked up at the arrogance of the true inheritance of the sword sect. It was just like her older brother. But unlike Lu Chage, she always wanted to punch this guy. Shuo Jihun was also a bit annoyed and spoke out. "Why is that person imitating sect leader Xibo? Damn, Xiaoqiu really wants to beat him up." Lu Dongli smiled and glanced at her disciple. At that moment, the master and disciple finally came to the same conclusion. Momen sect leader Lu Chage isn't in the mountain. The true disciple of the sword sect is here. Clearly something is going on. Then, it requires the only elder of the Mo sect to step forward and receive them. Lu Dongli was about to take a leaf-shaped boat from her waist. She quickly stopped the action. With her spiritual sense, she lightly called out, "It seems she doesn't need to go after all." Above the Mo sect, Chen Xiao stands on his flying sword. He wears the long robe of a true disciple of the sword sect. He stands tall against the wind. He feels a surge of anger in his heart. What's going on with the Mo clan? They've been here for quite a while, yet no one has come to welcome him. The purpose of this visit to the Mo clan was to distribute cultivation resources. Seeing how the Moa school treated their guests, I was about to leave. Suddenly, I saw Zhou Ji and Lu Bing coming from the direction I had arrived from. On a small... Lu Bing curiously looked back and exchanged a glance with Chen Xiao, who was standing on a flying sword. This glance shook Chen Xiao to his core. It would be so earth-shattering. Chen Xiao immediately imagined what it would be like if he did that move. What a sight that would be. At this moment, feeling Lu Bing's gaze, immediately stepped forward to clarify his identity and show off a bit. After stopping Lu Chao and Ji, he slowly spoke. A true disciple of the sword sect, a disciple of the second elder of the sword sect, Chen Xiao, a cultivator at the peak of the second realm. When Chen Xiao revealed his identity as a true disciple of the sword sect, he thought the three people before him would immediately start fawning over him. Instead, they simply nodded slightly. He stood with his hands behind his back as usual. He solemnly said, "That was the acknowledgement." In the next moment, he continued flying towards the danking peak of the Mo sect. He completely ignored Chen Xiao, who stood there stunned. At this moment, Chen Xiao felt a bit lost. My reputation from the sword sect doesn't work anymore. I was actually ignored. How can I possibly swallow this? I'm a future elder of the sword sect. In any subordinate sect of the sword sect, I'd be treated like a treasure. Thinking this, he mounted his flying sword and chased after the two at full speed. Circling once in the air before, he abruptly stopped Lu and Xiao. He loudly replied, "May I ask who you are?" Lu Arcio raised his right hand, and the power of heaven and earth quietly activated. Wisps of cloud and mist, manipulated by the power of water, surrounded him. Under the sunlight, the mist made him hazy. Chen Xiao looked around. A figure appeared in the hazy clouds. A voice as if from the heavens, then spread out in all directions. It was Shang Momen's leader Lu Xiuge. Why is this Shang? It's our leader's sense of superiority making the tickets. Traveling here. I've long been aware of the essence of the world. I never needed to be humble and low-key to show modesty. This is the first time Chen Xiao has seen someone so pretentious, unable to help but question. You a small sect leader of the Mo clan, and the leader of hundreds of sects below. You actually refer to yourself as above in front of a direct disciple of the prestigious sword sect. You call yourself above. I've come here under the orders of my sect. Is this the way the Mo sect entertains guests? Isn't this a bit disrespectful, sect leader Lu? Lu Chage stood with his hands behind his back. He replied, "Count. What did you call me?" Chen Xiao frowned and replied, "Master Lu." From within the mist, Lu Chage asked again, "Then what is your identity?" "I am a direct disciple of the sword sect." Chen Xiao emphasized his most proud identity word by word, once again stressing it clearly. Upon hearing this, seeing Lu Chage's light boat gently descend before Chen Xiao, he spoke in a very steady tone. A direct disciple is still just a disciple. This disciple, you are teaching this seed how to do things? Chen Xiao was stunned again. Is this person a fool? As a direct disciple of the sword sect, he could become an attendant or even an elder of the sword sect. It's just a matter of time. Becoming a great cultivator is basically a done deal. Is this person in front of me? Damn, how dare they not suck up to me? Is it because the sword sect's reputation is no longer useful? Or do they think I can't draw my sword anymore? Meanwhile, down below, Lu Dongli was watching all of this unfold. Brother, he's starting to act up again. After being momentarily deceived by Lu Chage, Chen Xiao released a spiritual sense. After a quick scan, he soon figured out Lu Chage's cultivation level. Just the fifth sky of the first realm. Chen Xiao was immediately stunned. Is that it? A moment later, Chen Xiao curled his lips into a sneer and spoke. Just now I used my divine sense to observe Master Lu's cultivation. It seems to be at the fifth layer of the first realm. I saw Master Lu turn around his back to Chen Xiao and smile crookedly, saying, "Oh, really?" After saying that, Lu quietly opened the system interface and chose to upgrade the first realm 6 heaven. Chen Xiao sensed the change in Lu Zhige's cultivation. He was dumbfounded. His inner thoughts exclaimed, "This is simply a living grandmaster? Could I possibly fathom a grandmaster's cultivation?" When President Lu used the system to level up twice, it wasn't just Chen Xiao who was shocked. Inside the gate below, Lu Dongli, who was acting as a bystander, also complained. "Brother, has the mirror shattered again?" Thinking back to when Lu Chage reached the great perfection of the first mirror, when the heavenly Tao awakened the spirit, and a cup of water shattered the fifth realm, when he realized the sword intent on the spot, and until he casually spoke a single sentence, he had broken through another small realm. Lu Dongli couldn't help but feel emotional. As expected, my brother is still the same brother. Thinking this, she closed her star-like eyes and smiled. The brother she admired most? Indeed, no one in this world could compare to him. Above the most sect, Lu Chage stood with his back to Chen Xiao, looking up at the sky, and the name Chen Xiao was also somewhat familiar to Lu Chage from his past life. He had heard of it before. In Lu Chage's impression, this guy was just a tool, always trying to act cool but never quite pulling it off. It was annoying. He was also Yu's #1 sycophant and lackey. Although the character design is a mess, they always manage to advance the main plot. In other words, a typical unreliable teammate. Thinking about this person's unreliable teammate attribute, so wasting the experience points I've painstakingly accumulated for over 20 years to get angry with an unreliable teammate, it's not worth it at all. In Lu Chage's eyes, the Tangxuan realm is a financial game. Experience should be spent on sharp edges like sword intent. Meanwhile, Chen Xiao behind him has his eyes wide open, his face full of disbelief. At the same time, he feels a burning pain on his cheek. Lu Chage no longer pays attention to the stunned Chen Xiao. Steering a small boat, he slowly flew forward with Lu Bing. Lightly and gently he said, "Follow me." His tone was soft, yet sounded almost like an order. But at this moment, Chen Xiao no longer had the previous arrogance. He bent down and respectfully said, "Yes, sect leader." After Chen Xiao finished his salute and looked up, he saw wasn't that the small boat? This is Elder Ning's unique flying treasure. Could it be a replica? Wait, something's wrong. Senior brother Yu and Elder Ning went down the mountain together this time. Could this Lu Zhaman be? The mysterious senior brother Yu mentioned. Chen Xiao's descent from the mountain, besides distributing resources to subordinate sects, had another major purpose: to find that mysterious senior brother. Senior brother Yu once personally told Chen Xiao that, within the affiliated sects of the Sword Sect, there is a mysterious senior brother who is Yu's lifelong rival. But just recently, after senior brother Yu returned with Elder Ning from the mountain, Yu suddenly burst forth with intense fighting spirit, and successfully awakened the sword intent. However, even after awakening the sword intent, Yu still felt that mysterious senior brother is even more outstanding. It was only when Chen Xiao kept asking that Yu finally learned the general location of this mysterious senior brother. He's in the Qinglongchuan area in the southern part of Qingzhou. It's obvious. The sect leader of Lu might very well be suspicious. Thinking of this, he mounted his flying sword and quickly pursued. At this moment, he looked at the back of Lu Chage. No matter what, Chen Xiao knew he had to investigate thoroughly. From now on, he would be sharing secrets with Senior Yu. They would have a little secret together. The thought was a little exciting. Chen Xiao, with the excited heart of a lovesick puppy, looked at Lu Zhige with incredibly fervent eyes. But Lu Bing noticed the look in his eyes. Why does this person keep staring at the young master's backside? He spoke up in confusion. Young master, the guy behind us, is looking at you with strange eyes. Let me block the view for you. At Lu Bing's reminder, Lu Chaoji turned around and looked at Chen Xiao, who looked like a pig. He couldn't help but clench his fist and say sternly, "If that bastard dares to make a move, I'll smash him to pieces." As soon as the words were out, Lu Bing, who had been poorly educated since childhood, immediately imagined some indescribable scene. She weakly asked, "Is that what you meant?" These words made Master Lu shiver. His eyes narrowed slightly. He cast a quick glance at Lu Bing and said, "Shut up. If you say one more word, I'll expel you from the sect." Lu Bing lowered his head slightly, feeling embarrassed. He muttered to himself, "How could I think of such strange things? After all, the young master's body. I've been with Kaihan for so many years. No one can take him away." At this moment, a huge shadow suddenly swept over the heads of Lu Qiao and Ji's group, bringing a gust of fierce wind, making it hard to open one's eyes. Wait until the shadow moves farther away. Only then did they realize the shadow was actually a giant eagle, with its wings spread wide. It looked like a fast-moving black cloud, and on the eagle's back was a heroic woman. Holding a wine jug, she casually tilted her head back and drank. Just as Lu Chage was about to shout out upon recognizing the woman's face, she was about to speak. The giant eagle soared swiftly, its warm gaze already dozens of yards away, and Chen Xiao, who was riding the sword, was also knocked off by the giant eagle. He fell off his flying sword. He was now in free fall through the air. Looking at the receding giant eagle, Lu let out a long sigh. It seems our fate hasn't come yet. But one day it will. We will meet again. Down below, inside the Mosek Donglai and his apprentice, both wore grave expressions at this moment. The young apprentice Ajize said blankly, "Master, I bet it's the head that came down first." It turned out, not far away, Cheng Xiao, who had just been flipped over, was now falling straight down towards the summit of Danking Peak. Not long after, the figure fell headfirst, crashing in front of Lu Dongli and his disciple. Unlike the playful Mosek, inside the Jingjin sect at this moment, an elders' meeting was being held. The atmosphere was quite awkward. The Jingjin sect had indeed decided to cut ties, but after discussing for a long time, they still couldn't agree on how much to cut. It hurts my throat. On the other hand, over at the Autumn Water sect, Lin Long's are even more intricate than E2's. In her view, there is no man in this world who is just a physical body. It's impossible to deal with. If it doesn't work, then two bodies. The entire Kashui sect. Only Shin Kinkin has seen Lu Chage's true face. She kept recommending herself. She was also quite aware of her experience in the bond between Guan and Bao. She had plenty of experience in this regard.